present Kenneth Williams, Clement Freud, Peter Jones and Alfred Marx in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hello and welcome to Just a Minute. And as you heard, we're delighted to welcome back to play the game against our three regular players, Alfred Marx. And once again, I'm going to ask them all to speak, if they can, without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject which is on the card. And according to how well they do it, of course, they will gain the points, win or lose. We will start the show this week with Clement Freud. Clement, the subject being absolutely certain. I think you often are, but will you talk about that subject for 60 seconds, starting now?
Being absolutely certain is all right when the subject is what is 1 and 2 and the answer is 3, or 4 and 6, which gives 10. And yet in the judiciary, judges, those sort of people, have very difficult jobs because now and again they would get a case of a man who stuck Green Shield stamps on his National Health Insurance card. And it's awfully hard to sentence
Alfred
him.
Marx is challenged.
There's a hesitation. Definitely.
I would agree, Alfred. I think there was a hesitation. It was awfully dreary, too. And you have 30 seconds on being absolutely certain, having gained a point, of course, for a correct challenge, and you start now.
May I carry on with what Clement was about to say about the man who did stick Green Shield?
Clement Freud is challenged.
Deviation has nothing to do with being absolutely certain.
Well, then you must have been awfully devious before, because you've just admitted it. There are 27 seconds for Alfred Marx to talk on being absolutely certain, starting now.
I will not be diverted from making my point. The man who put Green Shield stamps on his insurance card was hauled before the courts and he was fined 4 saucepans. Now, this is an absolute certainty, because if you do insist on...
Kenneth Williams is
Deviation. He's just quoted something which is a total lie, a pack of lies, a tissue of untruths. And so it's devious in the extreme.
Right, quiet. I have no way of proving that this man ever did what he did, or that
Nothing like that would happen before an English court, and you know it.
It might
no
have
judge
done.
would even discuss it.
He never said it was an English court. It might have been a court somewhere else, in some tin pot place.
Indeed it was.
Yes,
in
right.
a tin pot place.
When I have an impossible decision like this, the only thing I can do is bow to the superior wisdom and judgment of the audience, and I can see And I can see some fine legal minds in the audience there, I'm sure. Ladies and gentlemen, if you agree with the basis of Kenneth Williams' challenge, will you cheer for him? And if you disagree, will you boo for Alfred Marx? And will you all do it together now? That man was never fined 4 saucepans for his Green Shield stamps. I'm terribly sorry. The audience are the final judges. Kenneth, the 4 saucepans gets you a point for the correct challenge. 15 seconds on being absolutely certain, starting now.
The title is ridiculous. You are either certain or you're not. There's no such thing as absolute certainty in a human world. I always am certain about things seen with my own eyes and about nothing else.
The whistle that Ian Messiter blows tells us 60 seconds is up. Whoever speaks at that moment gains an extra point. On this occasion, it was Kenneth Williams, who has 2 points. At the end of that round, he's in the lead with Alfred Marx. Clement Freud and Peter Jones have yet to score. Kenneth Williams, will you begin the next round? And the subject is what the Greeks had a word for. Will you talk on that for 1 minute, starting now?
It is a remarkable fact that in this modern world, i.e. the 20th century, doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists actually use Greek terms for a modern state. Now, you could say the Oedipus complex, you see, or the Narcissus. Where do they derive from? The ancient Greeks. And in mythology, there was this bloke who, desiring to have such intimate knowledge of himself, looked into the reflection in the water and, allegorically they say, drowned himself. Well, there was this girl who was standing nearby. She was deeply in love with him. She wouldn't eat a thing. She had no food, no drink, no nothing. And she just pined away, and only her voice stayed, and to this day they call her Echo, because she was only, she was, Oh dear, oh dear.
Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition of O'Shea.
Yes, but I was worked up.
which was also deviating from what the Greeks had a word for.
It's not deviating at all. Echo was in love with Narcissus.
Not ushi.
That's neither here nor there. I mean, that's rotten, actually, if you draw attention to that, because that's an impediment. You should never draw attention to an impediment. You never should you. Thank you. Thank you.
The first time you've ever claimed...
There you are, that lady. Look at that lady. See.
The first time you've ever claimed you had an impediment.
Oh,
Clement Freud has a correct challenge, and he has 3 seconds on what the Greeks had a word for, starting now.
What? He's left it to 3 seconds. That's a disgrace. He's left it to 3 seconds. Oh, he's got it. He's got it.
And Kenneth Williams spoke during Clement Freud's 3 seconds. Nobody challenged Clement Freud for not saying anything. The whistle went, so Clement Freud gets the point for not speaking when the whistle went. Alfred, the subject is now with you, and it is how I impress my friends. Would you talk on that for 1 minute, starting now?
I impress my friends mainly by my tolerance, good manners, and sportsmanship. If I had a panel show where other people had to come on with me and had to interrupt me by deviation or hesitation, I would let the new boy have his say. I would not, in fact, buzz him on stupid things, as I have already had on this program. On the other hand, the title of impressed
Peter
friends...
Jones has challenged you.
Hesitation.
Yes, indeed, I agree.
Yes.
Well, I'm pleased he agrees. It's nice, isn't it? We're all fairly unanimous about that, aren't we?
Oh, absolutely, yes. Even though he's a new boy, we're still unanimous. 38 seconds, Peter, on how I impress my friends, starting now.
I really don't know how I impress my friends.
Kenneth Williams has
He doesn't know what he's... Shut up, then.
Well, as that is not a correct challenge, he gets another point, and there are 35 seconds for you, Peter, on how I impress my friends, starting now.
How I impress my friends is a mystery to me, and I've no hope, really, of ever solving the problem, because I am not able to read my obituary notices to find out what they really thought.
Clement Freud's challenged twice.
Repetition of really.
Yes.
Really? I mean, really, yes. Yes,
I'm afraid so.
I did
Yes,
say.
Clement, you have a correct challenge, and there are 22 seconds on how I impress my friends, starting now.
I impress my friends, namely,
Alfred Marx is challenged.
Well,
my
no
speech
doubt about the
ability.
hesitation.
Yes, and there are 20 seconds for you, Alfred, on how I impress my friends, starting now.
I have a joke that I have heard told many times before. It is about
And
the
Clement
man-
Freud is challenged.
It's repetition.
It is... But...
Only to me, not to the audience.
Yes, well, of course, the thing is, Alfred, that is repetition if you've heard something many times before, but you didn't repeat yourself talking about how I impress my friends.
I did not indeed.
14 seconds on how I impress my friends, starting now.
The best way to impress your friends is to have a telephone in your
And
car.
Kenneth Williams...
Deviation, that's not the subject. The subject is how I impress my friends. You just said how you should impress your friends.
Well, he said how he impresses his friends with the telephone in the bath. He has 12 seconds on how I impress my friends, Alfred, starting now.
May I correct you, it is not in the bath, it is in the car. And if you have...
And Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition of car.
9.5 seconds, Clement, how I impress my friends, starting now.
Alfred Marx, Peter Jones, Nicholas Parsons, Ian Messiter, great names with which to...
Alfred Marx is challenged.
I don't count myself as one of his friends, it's deviation.
But on the other hand, he was only saying how he would impress his friends.
But he mentioned me as one of his friends. I'm not one of his friends.
Oh, I see. All right, then, Alfred, you have half a second on how I impress my friends, starting now. At the end of that round, Alfred Marx has taken the lead ahead of
He's taking the
Clement
lead?
Freud. Yes.
Good heavens above.
Peter, you're equal in third place with Kenneth Williams, and you begin the next round, and the subject is Whoppers.
Whoppers.
Yes, there's a lot to talk about on that subject, but would you go on it for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, I shall just have to think of very big ones. Enormous they must be, like bridges, for instance, the Sydney Harbour one, and there's another further forth. oceans, the Pacific, the Atlantic, the things that swim in them, whales, and building-wise, of course, there is the Empire State Building, the telephone tower.
Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition of building.
Yeah, building-wise, Empire State Building. Building-wise. Yes, I'm afraid you did repeat it, Peter. Clement has a correct challenge. 37 seconds. Whoppers, Clement, starting now.
When my aunt left me £43 million.
Peter Jones is challenged.
We know she didn't, or he wouldn't be here.
It's a very good challenge, but of course we know we have no means of proving 43 million. No, I'm sure she didn't. All right, Peter, I will give it to you. Can you justify, Clement?
What is the subject?
Whoppers.
And you don't think saying my aunt left me £43 million is a whopper?
Is there anybody in the audience who'd like to become the chairman of Just a Minute?
Oh, it's a very common expression. You told a whopper.
I know, but he didn't know it was going to be a whopping lie. I thought it was, I think it's the chairman's prerogative to be able to change his mind when he knows he's wrong. Clement Freud, you have a wrong challenge against you. A point and 34 seconds on Whoppers starting now.
In January 1984, I walked down Piccadilly, which had been dug up.
Alfred Marx is challenged.
There will be no Piccadilly in 1984. I've seen the plans.
But he's trying to show us that he is telling another whopper.
Doesn't matter. I mean, a whopper must have some semblance of reality.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
I would have
it is
thought
totally
yes.
unbelievable.
And it's certainly unbelievable 1984.
Absolutely.
But you can't say when.
I quite agree with you.
Yeah, I'm glad you convinced me. There are 28 seconds on Whoppers, Alfred, starting now.
In 1674, if you tended to walk down Piccadilly, you might find, in fact, that it will not exist in the year 1984. And that's, by the way,
Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition of 84.
20 seconds on Whoppers, Clement, starting now.
A whopper is a name given to a huge or monumental lie, also an untruth, but sometimes simply an exaggeration. For instance, you might call on someone and say, "This is by far the largest building that I've ever seen outside the civilized world and go to 3."
Clement Freud then, speaking when the whistle went, gained the extra point, and he's now taken the lead over Alfred Marx. Clement, your turn. Subject, stupidity. 60 seconds starting now.
I've never tried to stupidity, but if you do go into a butcher shop and say, "I would like 3/4 pound of pidity and 1 pound of onions."
Alfred Marx, a challenge.
Both hesitation and deviation, I would say.
Which one are you going for?
Both.
You're playing safe. I can only accept one. Which one do you
Well,
want?
it was hesitation.
Yes, all right. I wouldn't have given deviation. Alfred, you have 49 seconds on stupidity starting now.
The height of stupidity was for me to press my buzzer just now to interrupt Clement Freud, because I really don't know what on earth I'm going to say about this subject.
Peter Jones has challenged you.
If he doesn't know what he's going to say, there's no point in going on with it.
What is your challenge then?
What
Waste
would you
of time,
do?
isn't it?
Waste of time. Yes. Valuable airspace is being wasted.
But he wasn't deviating from stupidity, Peter, so he keeps the subject and there are
He was
30...
demonstrating it, actually.
Well, you can demonstrate as well, if you like. There are 42 seconds on stupidity, Alfie, starting now.
The height of stupidity was an instant I saw.
And Clement Freud got in there.
Repetition of height.
Yes, you said it before, I'm afraid, Alfred.
Did I really?
Yes.
You said I could say it 4 times. I can't say it 4 times.
Not the height of stupidity. You said
No.
the height of stupidity
Did I?
before. Yes.
I see.
Yeah.
Yes.
You said the subject of the card more than
Thank you
once.
very much.
You've probably forgotten you said it because it wasn't very memorable.
No.
Remind me to be unkind to you sometime, Peter Jones.
Thanks
I get a
very
chance. There are 39 seconds with you, Clement, on stupidity starting now.
When I did history at school, I always remember being asked the dates of the kings and queens of England, which started with Henry IV, 1826, Queen Mary, 1903, George VIII, 1200.
And Peter Jones has got in there.
Queen Mary, 1911, not 1903.
You're both wrong, but it was deviation from the correct date.
Really?
I
Yes.
thought it was
And George VIII.
I thought it was manifest stupidity.
Oh, you were demonstrating everything. Yeah, it was manifest stupidity, but it was, I would call it more ignorance than stupidity. And the subject is stupidity. You can be stupid, but not ignorant. There are 24 seconds, Pete, on stupidity, starting now.
It's a very difficult thing to cope with in oneself, and perhaps even more so in others. And goodness knows I've had a great deal of experience of this, battling against...
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
Deviation, the whole thing's ludicrous. He says it's a difficult thing to cope with. Anyone who's stupid wouldn't be coping with it, because that's why they are stupid. They wouldn't be coping with anything, would they? They're just stupid.
No, but
the assumption would have to be that they were intelligent to cope with anything. I mean, it's daft. He's talking a load of rubbish.
No.
Thank you very much indeed, Clement. I'm glad you... I mean, he's been over there waffling away and challenging the chairman most disgracefully, calling him rude names and the other. I mean, he comes here, and there's me waiting to discuss something.
Kenneth,
goodness gracious.
You've said quite a lot now. Would you mind keeping quiet? Because I got the impression that he was saying how you would handle stupidity in others. So he wasn't deviating. He has 12 seconds on stupidity, Peter, starting now.
We often get wrong numbers on the phone, and the other day it rang, I picked it up, a voice said, "Is that you?" I said, "No, it's me," and he said, "Is she there?" It was just too ludicrous for words.
Well, Peter was then speaking when the whistle went. He gained a number of points in that round. He's moved forward, but I'm afraid he's still in third place behind our leaders, Alfred Marx and Clement Freud. Kenneth is trailing a little in fourth place.
Small wonder the way you conduct the game. No one has a chance to play it.
Kenneth, the subject is now with you, and it is the man in the street. Would you go for that for 1 minute, starting now?
Well, there was a man in the street, I am told, who went up to the Duke of Wellington and said, "Are you him?" And, oh no, I forgot what he did say.
Alfred Marx is challenged.
Oh, well, it's hesitation.
I'm afraid it was.
I didn't hesitate, I was going on.
Well,
Yeah, but you
going
didn't.
on, yes, you were rather going on.
There are 50... There are 51 seconds on the man in the street with you, Alfred, starting now.
It always bores me when television interviewers go up to the man in the street and ask his opinion on things which are totally out of his range. He knows nothing at all about the subject. Fancy asking a man in the street what he thinks of the price of Afghanistan eggs. And this man comes up with some erudite answer. What I prefer to ask the man in the street is to walk to him and say, "Would you give me a shilling for a cup of coffee?" To which he may reply, "It's only 6pence." You say, "I know, but I like to tip big." On the other hand, you might say, "Would you give me 2 shillings for a sandwich?" And he'll say, "I don't know, let me see it." All these sort of things make sense to me, and I would rather that you walked up to talk to a man.
Peter Jones is challenged.
A repetition of a man.
Yes, indeed.
Yes.
Because it's a different man.
It's on the
actually.
card, man in the street.
It's only part of it. I mean, that's
Well, it's
the
only part
subject
of the
is
man.
man
You only
in the
spoke to the
street.
part of the man. You only spoke to his ear.
But there
It's
are
a
all
different
those...
man, actually.
I know, it's a different man, but there's all those shillings, weren't there?
Well, it was a big sandwich.
There was all those
I have
shillings.
a friend in
Pete.
the audience who said, yes, yes. Every time you challenge me, every time you give me a downward, she say, yes, 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 yes.
I know, we have a very partisan
It's my
audience.
guts. She does all this. She does really. Oh, sorry, Kenneth. I beg your pardon.
That lot over there, sitting on that side, that's the Kenneth Williams fan club.
I see.
Peter Jones, will you talk on the man in the street? There's 17 seconds left, starting now.
It's generally accepted that this is the average representative.
Kenneth Williams, this is challenged.
Deviation is not generally accepted.
I
Never
think
asked
you,
that.
as a figure of speech, I think you could say it is. And there are 13 seconds on the man in the street with you, Peter, starting now.
So, people are natural.
And Kenneth Williams is challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, Kenneth, you have 12 seconds on the man in the street, starting now.
Of course, this is a ludicrous term.
Peter Jones is challenged.
Repetition of ludicrous. He said it was ludicrous before.
You said it was a ludicrous right at the start, Kenneth. I'm very sorry when you started on the man in the street.
This is worse than being bugged, isn't it?
Yes. 10 seconds on the man in the street, Peter, starting now.
If they can once ascertain his tastes and preferences, then they can...
Clement Freud is challenged.
Oh,
You were bored. You were naturally bored. He was very bored. He was dropping off, and in dropping off, so he touched his buzzer. You can't blame him. He was dropping off. He's come a long way. He's very tired. I don't want to listen to all this boring rubbish.
that's exactly what happened.
Exactly what happened. He
Yes.
suddenly thought he hadn't said anything new.
No.
No, on the call. That's where you're very
He
wrong.
challenged, and hoping in the time that I turned round that he would have time to think of a challenge. He failed. 4 seconds with you, Peter, on the man in the street, starting now.
When is he going to come indoors and create some trouble?
A very interesting situation has arisen in the score. Kenneth Williams is still in fourth place. Clement Freud is just, because he dozed off a bit, in second place. He's 1 point behind Alfred Marks and Peter Jones, who are now in the lead together. Peter has made a surge forward. Alfred, here's a nice subject that Ian Messett has thought of for you. It's your turn to begin, by the way. Being frank. Would you talk about that? 60 seconds, starting now.
There were two chaps, and one said to the other, "I'll be frank," and he said, "No, I'll be frank. You were frank last night." And this sort of joke lends credence to the belief that this sort of thing can be said. However, I am a philatelist, which is obviously somebody who adores stamps, and as such, my interest in being frank are the franks that go on stamps. I don't know whether you appreciate the fact that there are very different kinds and many, many of them. For example, there are the
Peter Jones
Maltese
has challenged.
cross.
Repetition of many.
Yes, there are too
Yes,
many.
well, there were very many of them.
Yes. But you've
I
got to
must
find a
learn to
different way of saying it.
I
than
must
many,
learn
many.
to stop that, yes.
Yes.
Yes, all right then.
A tremendous a number or something
Yes,
like that.
tremendous many number of numbers. Can I say tremendous, tremendous? No, I can't. No.
There are 35 seconds, Peter, on being frank, starting now.
It's something that's not easy to do. You have to bare your soul and reveal your innermost thoughts. And of course, it's often excruciatingly boring for those who are unfortunate enough to have...
And Alfred Marks the challenge.
I just agree, it is excruciatingly boring.
But it's a wrong challenge, so Peter gets another point, and you're neck and neck.
It was a
so
comment,
watch it.
actually, not a challenge.
It was what?
A comment, actually, not a challenge.
Yes, but if you challenge
I
and
see.
interrupt his flow,
Yes.
it's a point because it's incorrect. And
Yes, I
he's
don't
now...
even know his flow. I beg your pardon.
You better watch out for it, because his flow has put him in the lead now.
Is that right?
Yes.
Where is she?
You're going to get a taste of his flow in a minute.
Promises, promises.
All right, Peter. You have 22 seconds on flow. I'm sorry. There are 22 seconds to talk on the subject of being frank, Peter, starting now.
Psychiatrists and judges often beg one to be frank, and...
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
Deviation, they don't. They ask you to be truthful. Frank has nothing to do with that.
Well, they might ask you to be frank. They certainly would ask you to be
It does
truthful.
not mean being truthful, and when you're giving evidence,
But
what
he
a judge
never
is
said
asking
it
you
meant
for
the
is
same
truth.
thing. He was not deviating from being frank.
Of course it is.
And I
Saying
would...
what judges ask you to be. Judges don't ask. Ask to tell the truth, dear.
They may ask you to tell the truth, but I met a
I've
judge
been
in
in
private the
several-
other day, and he said, "Would you be frank with me?" And I was. Tell you something else, he's sitting in the audience tonight. And he said, "No, I'll be frank tonight." And I'm sorry, let's get on with the game. We're all being too facetious tonight. Peter, I disagree with Kenneth's challenge, so you have a point, and you have now 16 seconds, and I must warn you all, this is the last round. Peter's taken the lead, Alfred is just behind, Clement's just behind him. It's a very insidious game, and Kenneth's behind them. 16 seconds, starting now.
I know because a judge once said to me, frankly, it is a crime to manufacture alcohol in private and it is a misdemeanor to make water in public. Now, this was quite different and has nothing whatsoever to do.
Well, what a lovely note to finish this particular game of Just a Minute. So to give you the final score, Kenneth Williams finished, alas, in fourth place. And, yes, because it doesn't matter where Kenneth finishes, he always contributes so much. Clement Freud finished only just in third place, 1 point behind Alfred Marks, but they both finished, Alfred and Clement, a long way behind this week's winner, who surged from the rear to take a well-deserved victory, Peter Jones.
Thank you, Pang.
We do hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute, and we'll want to tune in again at the same time next week when once again we take to the air and we play Just a Minute. Until then, from all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by David Hatch.
We present Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud, Peter Jones, and Barry Took in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Hello and welcome to Just a Minute, and once again we're delighted to welcome back to Do Battle with our three regular contestants, Barry Took. And just to remind you all that I'm going to ask them to speak if they can for just 1 minute on some unlikely subject without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject, which is on the card in front of me, if they can do so. And we'll begin the show this week with Clement Freud. A nice subject for you, Clement, Pâté. Would you talk on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
Pâté is what builders use to affix glass into window frames, and if they use Vaseline, the whole thing is totally pointless because it falls out. Pronounced differently, like pâté, which often has a circumflex over the A and an accent aigu alongside the E, it is a mass of meat often held together with egg, flavored with onion, and as often as not, herbaceously...
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Repetition of often.
Yes.
I was copying it all down. I was...
Yes. Barry was going to rush.
No, he wasn't going to be very interesting.
Derek, I agree with your challenge.
It was quite interesting up to there, but it was flagging a bit.
Yes, I thought it was flagging a bit.
Well, it's a good thing that he challenged, wasn't it?
Yes.
So let us let Derek have a go now. Derek, you get a point for a correct challenge, and there are 31 seconds on Pâté or Pâté starting now.
I was standing in Glen Iris, which is in Melbourne, in the state of Victoria in Australia, when this man came up to me and said, "Hello, Derek, would you like to see my little Pâté? She's a lovely Sheila." And I said, "That's a very odd thing to say. How can your Pâté be a lady of that name?" He said, "No, you don't quite understand me, Mr. Nimmo." Got more polite by this time. He said, "I have this dear little Pâté. I want you to come back to my house and have a tube of Foster's with me and some nice...
Clement.
Repetition.
Repetition. So, Clement, with 2 seconds to go, you have Pâté once again, starting now.
Black or white peppercorns.
The whistle tells us that 60 seconds is up, and whoever is speaking at that moment gains an extra point. On this occasion, it was Clement Freud who, of course, has the lead as a result at the end of that round. Peter Jones, will you take the second round, and the subject is my secret method. Would you talk on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, of course, the more people I tell about it, the lesser secret it will be. So I'm not really going to divulge very much, except that I have been using it for many, many years.
Clement Freud got in first again. I now to know what your challenge was, Clement.
Many.
Yes, I mean, I know it was obvious, but we must want to be sure. I clear with your challenge, Clement. You have 44 seconds on my secret method, starting now.
My secret method is to get half a pound of minced pork, 6 ounces of fresh ground veal, and...
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
The deviation is not secret because he revealed it in the last question. When he was making
No,
his
he
pâté.
didn't actually say this. He just gave some of the ingredients that are in a pâté.
Well, it's no longer secret then, is it?
No,
It's
he's
not a
about to
secret. He's already
give
told
his
us.
secret method of pâté, as I understood it. I don't think it was a justified challenge. A very good attempt, but I'm not going to grant it. No, Derek, Clement, you have a point for an incorrect challenge, and you continue with 37 seconds on my secret method, starting now.
to which I pour a nameless ingredient, place it in an oven of indeterminate temperature, and bake it for a period of time which I'm not prepared to divulge at this moment. Many of my best friends consider it the finest meal they have ever eaten, because vegetables, fish, rice, fruit, as well as condiments and spices and a hint of sulfuric acid. The oven...
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Origin of oven and hesitation.
Yes, well, you can't have them both. You can't have 2 points. There was a hesitation after the sulfuric acid, and who wouldn't? But I agree with your first challenge anyway, Derek. So you have 4 seconds for my secret method starting now.
My secret method is to keep the bum on my buzzer. I meant to say the buzz on my buzzer. My bum on my buzzer, not my bum on my buzzer. I'm so sorry. I had to erase from the brain.
All I can say...
If my mum is listening, can I please apologise?
All I can say is that in just a minute, sometimes you get these little slips and the truth comes out. And Barry took, I'm delighted to say, challenged. And so, Barry, what was the challenge?
I've forgotten in the welter of apology.
Hesitation,
I would think.
deviation, yes. Everything
and...
except repetition, but considering what he was talking about, it wasn't very far behind.
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
Barry, you have a point for a correct challenge, and you have 2 seconds left on my secret method starting now.
My secret method is silence.
Barry Took was then speaking when the whistle went. He gained the extra point. He's moved into second place alongside Derek Nimmo, and Clement Freud is still in the lead, and Peter Jones is trailing. Barry, would you begin the next round, please? The subject, making the most of it. Would you talk on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
When I first appeared on this programme, I was intensely delighted by it, and I thought, I shall be making the most of it as a broadcaster. I know that was a fairly illiterate thing to say, but I felt deeply and passionately that this was my great moment in broadcasting. Many years ago, I sat on this humble stage.
Peter Jones has challenged.
Repetition of broadcasting.
Yeah.
No, broadcast and broadcasting.
He said broadcast and broadcasting.
Did he?
Yes, he did. I mean,
yes.
Peter. So he has a
Yes,
point
he did.
for
Oh,
an
he did.
incorrect challenge.
Yes, I remember it clearly.
Yes, so 41 seconds left on making the most of it, Barry, starting now.
Workers...
Peter Freud has challenged.
Hesitation.
Oh, you rotten thing. Barry Took has another point because he hasn't been with us as long as you, and there are 39 seconds for making the most of it, starting now. Nimmo has challenged.
Well, hesitation, and he's been here a bit longer now.
And not only that, his hesitation was a bit longer, too. Only trouble is it's not fair to Clement Freud if I give you a point for that, so probably...
I don't mind you upsetting Clement Freud. Got nothing to do with me. Upset as much as you like.
But I don't want to upset the audience, and they might start...
I know you're
things,
frightened of Clement Freud.
I'm not
always
been frightened of them. No,
He was
I
at
think
school with Clement Freud.
The fairest thing to do...
He's always been frightened of Clement Freud. I don't blame him. I'd be frightened of Clement Freud, wouldn't you? Imagine meeting that in the dark night.
To make it equally fair between you two tough contestants, Derek and Clement, that I will do the same as I did last time Barry was with us. I gave a point against you and Clement for Barry, so I'll do the same again. Barry has another point, and he keeps the subject of making the most of it, and this is the last time, Barry, that I'm going to be so lenient. There are 37 seconds on making the most of it, Barry, starting now.
When I first mounted this podium back in 1951...
Oh, don't be, yes, I'm...
Repetition of when he first. When he first stood on the stage.
Yes, and when he first on the stage. That is a perfectly good and clever
apologise.
challenge. There are 36 seconds now with you, Derek, on making the most of it, starting now.
If you get a point in this game, you really have to make the most of it, because they're pretty hard to come by tonight, I can tell you. When you've got a loaded, bigoted chairman sitting there, all puffed up with vanity, holding in his hand his arm. Now, just have a look. Not very interesting, really. You should see what he's got down there underneath the table. A bottle of gin. I'm not surprised. He's making the most of it. Every now and again, you think he's drinking water. Not a bit of it. He has a quick swig, he does. And needs it, you know. Gone his brain, gone a bit soft. It's age, really. 65. My father was at school with him, he knows. And tries to play juveniles all the time, because he's making the most of it, mind you. It won't last much longer.
In spite of the things he said, I'm tempted to give him 2 points, because it really was a magnificent little dissertation, wasn't it? Derek. Oh, you've just gone ahead. Let's put you back one, shall we, and start the next round with Clement Freud. We've heard enough from you for a bit. Clement, will you begin the next round, please? The subject is affairs of consequence. That's a lovely subject, isn't it? Would you talk on it for 60 seconds, starting now?
I had no affairs of consequence before I was 15, but very soon after that date, I began to indulge in a fully half-hearted...
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Well, I thought the hesitation was...
Yes, I agree about the hesitation. We're going to hear from you again, Derek, and there are 50 seconds
so sorry. It was very understandable at that age.
Yes. Affairs of consequence, Derek, and there are 49 seconds left, starting now.
I would like, first of all, to make a public apology for speaking again. It's not...
Clement Freud has challenged.
Deviation.
Why?
He's talking about, or is meant to be talking about, affairs of consequence.
Well, that wasn't an affair of consequence.
It's a totally irrelevant remark, which has got to be deviated.
No, he started off by saying, I do wish to apologise. He
wanted to make a public apology. Well, I want to make a party political broadcast, as a matter of fact.
I would like to have sung God Save the Queen, but
I'd like it.
if we are going to stick to the subject...
He hadn't got time to really establish that he was deviating from the subject of affairs of consequence, because the apology might well have been to do with his first affair of consequence. So, Derek, you have another point, and there are 46 seconds on affairs of consequence starting now.
Affairs of consequence are often the consequence of affairs. This is a truism which I believe was spoken by my friend Smith round about 1942, and I wrote it down particularly because he was one of the green pack.
Clement Freud is challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, I agree with the hesitation. Clement, you have 31 seconds now on affairs of consequence starting now.
The consequence in my affairs began with Mavis and moved smoothly through Gladys, via Stella, onto Mary, and across the board to Ursula, the latter lady being exceedingly angry about the whole thing and suing me for libel, also slander, although I'd never spoken disparagingly about her. But affairs of consequence are such that you come out of it shaking slightly at the knees, blushing to your eyebrows.
That's a lot of nonsense. He does talk on occasions. But you kept going, Clement, gained the extra point for speaking when the whistle went. You're now in the lead alongside Derek Nimmo at the end of that round. And Derek, would you begin the next round? The subject, old habits. Can you talk about them for 60 seconds, starting now?
Old habits are difficult to get rid of. It's a sort of rather boring truism that one hears from time to time.
Peter Jones...
If it's boring, I don't want to hear about it.
Oh, really? What's the challenge?
Repetition of time.
Freud told him to say that. I saw him whisper it.
I know.
Rotten cheat, Freud.
Oh.
Slow on your buzzer, then you pass on the information. Rotten cheat.
The fact remains is that Peter still
Cheating.
said it. So, repetition. Peter, you have 51 seconds on old habits, starting now.
I've seen Derek himself wearing them from time to time on the television screen.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Repetition of time, time to
Yes,
time.
from time to time.
Oh, yes.
46 seconds.
I think Freud told him that.
46 seconds, Derek. Old habits starting now.
One of the things about the Carmelites are the fascination of their habits.
Clement Freud.
Deviation.
Why?
One of the things has got to be is and not are.
Yes.
It's a deviation of grammar.
The deviation of grammar. That's what I call a tough one. Because
That is a tough one, isn't it?
You have to keep going
Well, don't
under
give it
stress
if
and
it's-
strain.
if you think it's tough.
Right, very good.
It is tough, but it's accurate, so you get a point, and I'm
So
allowed
it's
to
a
make a
correct
comment.
challenge.
What?
You mean it's correct?
It's correct,
Oh, good.
but it's still tough. And there are 41 seconds.
You would make a great judge. You really would.
I'm not a judge. I don't set myself up as a judge. I'm a chairman, and he's got to be a very strange human being. 41 seconds.
May I second that motion?
And in just a minute, he's going to be a bit of a madman, too.
I once knew a judge at a wink, and everybody thought they were getting off lightly. And he used to go,
I sentence you to be taken from this place to the place from where you were brought and sentenced to be whipped on the soles of your feet, and that class of thing.
I don't know why I mentioned that.
We were beginning to wonder too, Barry, but...
I think it's the heat. The heat and the zips.
Right, 41 seconds, Clement.
You're not allowed to mention
old
flies
habits.
on the BBC.
41 seconds, old habits. Clement, starting now.
I didn't begin old habits until I was 43, when I was mature and elderly enough to indulge in them, and a lot of pleasure they have given me to date. One of my most revolting old habits is the wearing of a shirt for a week or more at a time. But
Derek Nimmo challenge.
Well, I mean, he quite justifiably packed up their hesitations.
What did you pack up to get that sort of reaction from the audience? Did you plant him there, Derek?
No, they could just smell him from there, that's all they wanted.
I was barracked by a laundrette operator.
Oh, the gentleman in the front row hasn't smiled until now, and you... Anyway, Derek, I agree with your old habits. I agree with your challenge, and you have the old habits back with you, and there are 18 seconds left, starting now.
When they received via John of the Cross the vision of the blessed scapula, they changed the colour and texture of their habits from white to brown. And
Peter Jones, a challenge.
Repetition of white. He mentioned white earlier on. He was talking about the
white sepulchre, didn't he? That's right, yes.
White
Peter.
sepulchre? I've not mentioned
No, the Carmelites.
The Carmelites,
That's
yes, they
right,
were wearing the white things.
White and brown.
Yes.
Always keep
When you were
saying
talking about the
white.
Carmelites,
Yes.
you used the word white.
I gave up counting after about 5.
Yeah. There are 7 seconds, Peter, with you on old habits, starting now.
And they can be very comforting as one nears the end of one's life and the shadows are lengthening.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
very tough challenge, repetition of ones.
I'm not going to allow it.
Oh,
Peter
right,
Jones
right.
has
I thought
one...
you liked tough challenges, so you can say, that's a tough challenge. You would like to say that to impress the listeners.
1 second left, Peter, on old
Fierce,
habits, starting
manly
now.
game.
Very nice indeed.
Well, Peter Jones got some well-deserved points at the end of that round, and he's moved forward, but he's still in 4th place. And Barry Took, will you begin the next round? The subject, the Equator. Would you talk about that? 60 seconds, starting now.
Who was it that said I can put a girdle round the earth in 40 minutes and make it 10 pounds lighter? I don't know the answer to that question, nor am I going to attempt to give you any rational explanation. The equator is the thing that circumnavigates. Is that the word I'm looking for? No, it isn't.
And
But it
Derek
doesn't
Nimmo has
matter.
challenged. What is your challenge?
Various hesitations.
There was hesitation,
1 or 2 repetitions.
definitely, yes.
And a deal of deviation.
Yes.
You name it, it was.
All right. You have a point, because I only accept one of them. 40 seconds on the Equator, Derek, starting now.
Well, of course, it's terribly hot, you know. I do like equatorial Africa. Now, when one is out there amongst those people with the shining skins, living in their little kraals with spears, there is a feeling of primitive man, I'm doing a Kenneth Williams, which terribly excites me. And somehow, when you sit around a fire at night with your little billy can, if you have one...
Clement Freud has challenged.
Repetition of little.
Yes. Clement, you have 18 seconds on the Equator, starting now.
I first came across the equator when I walked from Dar es Salaam due east, and suddenly a notice was pinned.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
You can't come across the equator if you're walking due east. Only if you're going southeast or northwest, you can then cross the equator. If you're going due east, you keep on going east and you can't get to the middle.
The equator is equidistant from the North and South Poles. If you're going due east, you would never come near the equator. You'd be the same distance from it all the
You'll
way.
keep on going round and round circles, Dick.
Which I don't think you were. So Derek Nimmo has a point, and there are 9 seconds on the equator, starting now.
The first time that I crossed the line, there was jolly old King Neptune and the demon Barb, and I had my face covered with foam as we were there on the Mauritania.
Derek Nimmo, crossing the equator, gained an extra point, and he's taken the lead at the end of that round. And the subject now, Peter Jones. Would you go on ping pong? Would you talk about that? 60 seconds, starting now.
Well, this, of course, is the name for table tennis. I don't think it's very apt, really, because it's obviously meant to sound like the game as being played, but I think it would be better if it were referred to as...
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
A repetition of think.
Yes. Derek, you have the subject of ping pong with 47 seconds starting now.
When one looks at the state of the world and you see that America and China did not speak to one another for all those years, isn't it incredible when one realizes that the rapprochement...
Peter Jones has challenged.
Repetition of one.
When one.
Yes. All right, Peter, you have 34 seconds now on ping pong starting now.
Better if it had been called Pong Pong. Because...
Clement Freud has tried. And very apt that he should after his remark about the shirt.
Repetition.
What of?
Pong.
Pong is on the card.
No, ping pong is.
Ping pong is 2 words. And pong is one of the words on the card. He didn't say ping pong, but he repeated pong.
Uh-huh.
And there's a bit of a niff around, so let's get on with it. And the subject is still with you, Peter. 30 seconds left, starting now.
And as Derek Nimmo was explaining to you, it was this great game played at a green table which brought these two nations...
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
game.
I had mentioned game before.
Yes, you did, at the very beginning.
But right at the beginning, you talked about the
name
game
commonly
table
given to the
tennis.
game.
Oh, you mean when I was talking before?
Yes.
Ah, yes,
You
I
said
thought you meant this
table tennis
time.
was yes, but I was afraid it all counts, Peter, and I have to try and remember back. There are 20 seconds, Derek, on ping pong with you starting now.
I think it would be a very good idea if the game was called ping, ping, ping.
Clement Freud has challenged.
Repetition of think.
Yes, he did say think before, you're quite right.
challenged
18
with-
seconds on ping pong with you, Clement, starting now.
Onomatopoeically, if it were called ping ping pong pong instead of ping pong.
Peter Jones has challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes,
He
indeed.
gave up after ping, ping, pong, pong, ping, ping.
Well, he might.
Yes.
There are 12 seconds, Peter, for you with ping pong starting now.
Actually, over there in this oriental world, where it is indulged in frequently, night after day, there they... And
Yeah, I think he deserved that applause for managing to find the day after the night when you have to keep going after the phrase. Peter, you leapt forward at the end of that round, but I'm afraid you're still trailing a little behind Clement Freud and Derek Nimmo. Derek's still in the lead away, just ahead of Clement. Derek, will you begin the next round? The subject, cheers. Would you talk on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
Cheers are something that one tends to hear in a football crowd or perhaps even in a theatre. Not, of course, in this one, because we're not really quite good enough to be rewarded with that particular kind of acclaim. Other times, in a pub, perhaps, you lift your cognac contained in a glass to your lips, and there you say, cheers to your jolly chums, and they say, what a good old fruit. And then, of course, you have to pay the bill, which is the nasty disturbing part about the evening, and we don't like very much. Mind you, it has been said that a cup of good cheers. Now, I use that word advisedly. Before I'm pulled up and told that I'm speaking ungrammatically, I would like to say that people do on Tuesdays in Lent say cheers. Now, why, you might ask? I tell you. Because if the pancake won't go round the right way...
Peter Jones has challenged.
deviation.
Why?
He's reduced to talking about pancakes. So he can't talk about cheers anymore. And now he's on about
I
pancakes.
would have inclined to agree with you, Peter.
You
I
would?
mean, whereas cheers, what does it do with pancakes turning round the right way?
I thought it was ping pong.
Yes,
Must have dozed off. I
Well
didn't.
done, he was... Why don't you try saying good evening again? You got a point for it last time. There are 10 seconds, Peter, with you cheers starting now.
And they can give heart to the person who is struggling in fourth position in any kind of competition. And if thank you very much, rewarded by the sound of Michael.
Well, those ironic cheers from Derek Nimmo.
Well, they're ironic, were they?
They were ironic, yes.
ironic
He
at
was
all.
trying to convey that you were struggling in fourth place, but you're not. You were doing very well in third place. I'm afraid we have no more time to play just a minute, so let me give you the final score. Barry Took, who nobody came back after doing so well on his first visit to us, did quite well, but he did finish in 4th place behind Peter Jones, who leapt forward, but he didn't quite catch up Clement Freud, who was in 2nd place, and who didn't ever quite catch Derek Nimmo, who was once again the winner of Just a Minute. So we do hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute. From all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by David Hatch. We present Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud, Peter Jones and Sheila Hancock in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hello and welcome to Just a Minute. And as you've just heard, we're delighted to welcome back Sheila Hancock to compete against our 3 regular competitors of the game. And I'm going to ask them to speak, as usual, if they can, for just 1 minute on some subject without hesitation, without deviation, and, of course, without repetition. And according to how well they do it, of course, they will gain repetition. Repetition. We're going to begin the show this week with Clement Freud, and the subject, after my little fluff there, is diction. Clement, would you speak on the subject of diction for 60 seconds, starting now?
What was the subject again?
Oh, very good. And nobody's challenged you for that. Sheila Hancock is challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, I'm going to give it to you, Sheila, because he was so rotten. Absolutely rotten. It was a very good joke, though, wasn't it, really? So, Sheila, you've got an advantage.
Went well, too, didn't it?
Returning with less experience and practice than the 3 fellows, you deserve to have a start there. 1 point for a correct challenge and the subject of diction, and there are 52 seconds left, starting now.
Diction is one of the things that you're supposed to learn when you go to the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art or some such place. I had a Cockney accent when I went, and I spent 2 years getting rid of it, and the first part I played when I left was a Cockney one, and so I had...
Repetition of Cockney.
Yes, they all pressed their buzzers. Clement pressed it that fraction early, so he got in. You have a correct challenge, a point for that, Clement, and there are 42 seconds on diction, starting now.
I've always rather prided myself on my diction because I enunciate words very clearly, and hardly ever does anyone.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Deviation, he doesn't, he mumbles.
We have to give Derek Nimmo a correct challenge and say there are 30 seconds on diction. Derek, starting now.
Round the rugged rock, the ragged...
Sheila Hancock has challenged.
I'm sorry, I thought he was going to repeat rugged.
Oh, what a pity.
I thought it was a rugged rascal.
Because you challenged... Well anticipated, but bad luck. Derek, an incorrect challenge, another point to you. 25 seconds, diction starting now.
Sergeant Major Richard Shum joined the Grenadier Guards when he was 15 years old.
Someone's challenge, but no light has come on. I think it was you, Sheila.
It's
yes.
me. He said the Grenadier Guards.
He did see the Grenadier Guards.
Yes, they were a very special regiment. Well, you know, a lot of regiments have gone the last few years. It's a shame about it.
Yes, well, there are no, as far as I know, Grenadier Guards.
So I told you, they've been disbanded, I did say that.
And you can obviously, in this game, wangle out of it by saying, oh, this was a special one I was thinking of, but I think we knew what he was talking about. So, Sheila, we give you your correct challenge. 20 seconds left. Diction starting now.
The tongue, the teeth, and the lips are the place where diction is taking place.
Clement Freud.
Deviation. 3 things can't be the place.
The tongue, the teeth, and the lips.
It's a piffling challenge. It's
It's a
rather
piffling
ungallant
challenge.
with it, I thought. didn't
What?
you? A bit ungallant.
I agree.
I can't hear your mumbling again. Can't hear a word.
So I agree with Peter Jones that as it's a piffling challenge, it may be correct. I'm going to give it to Sheila Hancock
I wish
and
you
say she
wouldn't. I'm
has
getting
15
awfully bored
seconds
with it.
on Diction starting now.
And as a result, you have to exercise all these parts of your mouth if you are going to...
Peter Jones.
Much as you might try, you can't exercise your teeth.
Very good challenge.
And
Peter.
repetition of mouth, says
Yeah.
Freud. Yes. You get a bonus
And also-
point. What? No, but
And
the
the other
idea
thing-
of exercising your teeth appealed to me rather.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it's...
Anything else that she slipped up on, Peter?
Oh, repetition of mouth.
Yeah,
yes.
that's fine. All
Did
right,
I
Peter.
say mouth before?
Yes.
You
yes.
have
Underneath the mouth.
you have a correct challenge, Peter. 10 seconds left on Diction starting now.
To be or not to be.
Oh,
That's the classic.
Well, I knew that. I just thought I'd wonder whether they will sit back and enjoy it or whether they're small and mean enough to try and mess it up. And you see they
I
were.
think
We are.
that was one of the most ridiculous attempts to speak in just a minute I've ever heard.
I mean, it's just ridiculous. Rather than sit and drink in the poetry, they would rather win a point on just a minute. Good heavens, you don't often hear me playing Hamlet.
Thank God.
They never have the opportunity again. Serve you right.
When are you going to start? Clement
it's just-
Freud, you have a correct challenge. In other words, you were the first to buzz, and so you have a point for that, and there are 8 seconds on Diction starting now.
Well, my mother sent me to them too.
Derek Nimmo challenge.
Well,
needs-
for whatever reason, I must win a point.
What is your challenge?
Repetition of
All right. We give it to you on that, Derek. And there are 6 seconds left on Diction, Derek, starting now.
Dear Sybil Mary Jane Green had the most...
I've just realised we've only now, at last, come to the end of the first round in this edition of Just a Minute, because so much was said, so much was challenged, and so much fun was had. At the end of the first round, Peter Jones has 1 point, Clement Freud has 2, Sheila Hancock has 3, Derek Nimmo has 5. And we begin the second round with Peter Jones, and the subject is prunes and custard. Peter, would you talk on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
Right, listeners, it's time for my annual talk on prunes and custard. Now, I propose to devote 30 seconds to prunes and a similar amount of time to custard.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Deviation. He hasn't got 2 lots of 30 seconds left.
Yes, but he can still devote it, and the whistle will go before the second 30 seconds is up, so he wasn't deviating. You have another point, Peter, and 44 seconds on prunes and custard, starting now.
Soak the prunes in brandy overnight. That gives you a very good start. Then the custard...
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
We're
One.
going to start with prunes, and he's given him a very good start.
Yes, that's right. You did have 2 starts, but of a different nature, I agree, but it was repetition of the word. Derek has a point. There are 37 seconds on prunes and custard, Derek, starting now.
Well, I don't think prunes and custard was a very good subject the first time we had it. They don't seem to have improved with age. In fact, I don't awfully like prunes and custard. I never have. When I was at school, I used to be given them quite frequently, and they made me feel quite...
Clement Freud has challenged.
Hesitation.
No, I don't think it was quite hesitation. I thought you... who someone said?
Repetition of quite.
Yes, Sheila, you can have that one. And the I don't think... Actually, no. Clement got in with his challenge first. I agree. I thought he was actually going to challenge on the quite. No, so it's only fair to Derek. An incorrect challenge. 20 seconds left with you, Derek, on prunes and custard, starting now.
If your diction is tremendously good, you are invited by all your chums to say prunes and custard several times at weekends to demonstrate to their friends, children, and...
Peter Jones has challenged.
Repetition of friends.
Yes.
Yes.
And you have a point.
Yes.
The pause came because we were all thinking if we had repeated the word, and I decided he had. So there are 6 seconds for you on prunes and custard, Peter, starting now.
The custard must be made with egg yolks and have a certain amount of cream in it. Otherwise, it's going to be very much like wallpaper glue.
Peter Jones was then speaking when the whistle went, so he gained that extra point, and he's moved into second place at the end of that round behind Derek Nimmo. Sheila, Hancock, will you begin the next round? The subject, hanging about. 60 seconds, starting now.
This is something that they do a lot in Rome, on street corners, whistling as the girls go by. It's something you do as an actress, quite something.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
The first time it was hyphenated, the second time it wasn't.
But I agree with Derek's challenge, and so, Derek, you have a point, of course, and 50 seconds on hanging about, starting now.
If one walked upon Tyburn Hill in years gone by, you would see the most unpleasant things hanging about. You would look up, and from the beam, one would spy with one's tiny eye.
Peter Jones has challenged.
He said one several times.
Yes, he did. I'm afraid that's a rather tough challenge, Peter.
Yeah, but he didn't just repeat it. He repeated the repetition of it.
Well, to have made your challenge, it's a correct one, and so on this occasion we give you a point, and there are 37 seconds on hanging about, starting now.
Yes, all these bodies hanging about Marble Arch. It must have been quite a sight as they came through Bedlam, because that was just outside Selfridge's. Now, of course, it's inside Selfridge's.
Clement Freud is challenged.
Deviation.
Why?
Bedlam was a hospital in the East End. Nowhere
But
near
he was
Selfridge.
describing a state of bedlam. He wasn't describing, to my mind, a place, and this was the witticism that he was making.
I thought he was totally unwitty. And if he was talking about Tyburn and hanging, then Selfridge's was no longer, it was not.
But that was not your challenge,
Yes.
so you can't have it
Yes,
now, your second attempt.
It was a period challenge.
No. You have a block challenge. One fails, you'll double up with something else.
No.
Your first challenge was the Hospital of Bedlam. That was incorrect, so
I said
Peter
he
has
must have
another
meant that,
point,
right,
and he
yeah.
has
Well, I wouldn't
27
try, I wouldn't.
seconds. Hanging about, starting now.
And newspapers, wallpaper, can all be
Clement
hyphenated,
Freud
all
has
of it.
challenged this time.
All hyphenated. Most of my conversation is hyphenated.
Clement
A
Freud.
repetition of all those hyphenated papers.
Yes, all right, Clement, I agree this occasion. 25 seconds on hanging about, starting now.
Perhaps the most signal incident of hanging about is waiting for prunes and custard to mature. And it must be understood that one has these for very different reasons. One consumes the first.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Repetition of one.
Yes, all right. If we're going to be given against you, Derek, I agree. It must
Do you
also
remember
be
you
given
said
against
we were not going to give any more
I
petty
was
challenges?
hoping, but it's a vain hope with the aggressive people who play this game. But it was given against Derek before. It's only fair that Derek should have it for him on this occasion. There are 13 seconds on hanging about, Derek, starting now.
Sometimes on a railway station, one hangs about looking for people to
Clement
say...
Freud is challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, of course. Yes, you dried up because of the one, but you shouldn't. You should have kept going. 8 seconds on hanging about, Clement, starting now.
Perhaps the greatest time of hanging about was during the war.
Derek Nimmo has
It's a
challenged.
repetition of perhaps. Perhaps the great was prunes and custard. Now we've had the same thing again.
All right, Derek, another point to you, and there are 6 seconds on hanging about, starting now.
Perhaps the greatest example.
I'm sure he said perhaps too.
I'm afraid he hasn't in this particular round. I have to listen very carefully, and it's very difficult. There are 5 seconds on hanging about, Derek, starting now.
Hanging about is a...
Clement.
Hesitation.
I agree. They've all got so tensed and keyed up. It's 2 seconds for hanging about, Clement, starting now.
On the second floor of an emporium in Oxford Street.
Clement Freud got the extra point then for speaking when the whistle went, and many attempts for the others to get it. And at the end of that round, I must tell you that Sheila Hancock is lying fourth, just behind Clement Freud, who's surprisingly in third place. Peter Jones is still in second place, and Derek Nimmo is still the leader. And Derek Nimmo, your turn to begin. The worst thing in this studio. That is the subject Ian Mester's thought of. We're dreading to hear what you say, but will you start it now?
Casting my eyes around me, it's rather difficult to discover what is the worst thing in the studio. By the studio, I take it to mean the whole building. And in fact, now I come to think about it, the worst thing in the studio today is the cistern in the gentleman's lavatory. It has an overflow from it, which points directly at the seat at the moment the ball cock is stuck. And I was having a moment's contemplation just before...
Repetition of moment.
Yes, but I'm surprised that someone didn't challenge on the gentleman's lavatory, because it's not in the studio. Not as far as I know. So, Clement, a correct challenge. The worst thing in this studio, 39 seconds, starting now.
The worst thing in this studio, present company accepted, and also not including the audience, has got to be the lighting, which I feel to be totally inadequate, entirely unflattering, and to a considerable extent making it impossible for me to read the newspaper, and therefore having to listen to the extraordinary conversations, challenges, and interlocutory...
Sheila Hancock was challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, I don't know what he was talking about. He was dribbling on a bit there. I really didn't hear the last few words, Clement. They were dribbled down. So, Sheila, you have a point and 14 seconds on the worst thing in the studio, starting now.
I don't think anybody can challenge that the worst thing in the studio is me, because I am
Clement Freud is challenged.
Deviation.
Why?
I've just challenged.
A clever challenge, but I think it didn't get any response from the audience, so I can't even...
sleep.
What else in the gentleman's lavatory? I don't know. Sheila has a point, because that was an incorrect challenge. The worst thing in the studio, Sheila, and there are 8 seconds left, starting now.
Using one of Nicholas Parsons' phrase, I am trailing somewhat, because my brain is not functioning very quickly today, as is apt to happen, you.
Well, Sheila's brain functioned well enough to keep her going and speaking when the whistle went, gained the extra point. She's now only 1 point behind Clement and Freud and Peter Jones, who are equal in second place behind our leader, who is still Derek Nimmo. Clement Freud, your turn to begin. The subject, singing. Will you talk on that? 60 seconds, starting now.
Talking on singing is rather like being asked to sing on talk, and not at all an easy thing for me, because I'm totally unmusical. I don't even know what to stand up for, and for which renderings among the musical...
Hesitation.
Yes, indeed. It completely dried him up singing. There are 42 seconds, Sheila, on singing, starting now.
I am a great lover of classical music, and it was only last year that I joined...
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, indeed, Derek. There are 37 seconds on singing with you, starting now.
I'm frightfully keen on singing, and I know the words of all sorts of songs. For instance, here's to the pretty young maid of 15. Something similar.
Sheila Hancock.
Hesitation.
Yes, he forgot what happened about that pretty young maid of 15. He thought
Beneath
too much
the age of consent, isn't it?
He thought so long about her, he completely dried up.
I've forgotten whether she was 15 or 16, eh?
I wouldn't worry to work that out in just a minute. Keep going, Derek. Sheila, you have the subject back of singing, and there are 27 seconds left, starting now.
I had always thought opera was slightly comical, all those people acting up a storm but not saying it. When somebody is about to die, they have a long aria. Not really appreciated it at all until one day I went to see St. Matthew's Passion, which is oratorio, at the Festival Hall, and I have never been so moved in my life, since when I have become an absolute addict of this particular type of music, listening for hours on end.
Well, Sheila was complaining that her brain was not functioning as actively as usual, but certainly she's done something to it now, because she's leapt forward, she's overtaken Clement Freud and Peter Jones, and she's only just behind our leader, who is still Derek Nimmo. Peter Jones, your turn to begin. The subject, scraps. Would you talk about scraps for 60 seconds, starting now?
I had a dog called Scraps once, and he was a very lovable little canine, and he ran about wagging his tail and chewing up bedroom slippers and mattresses and anything else that happened to be lying about. And he adored going out into the field among the grass and chewing the various...
Sheila Hancock, John.
Well, it's hesitation.
Yes, I
A
love...
bit devious to be among the grass.
Yes, what I adored so much was the idea of him, you know, he was chewing the mattresses or anything else that happened to be lying about. The picture of Peter Jones' home with mattresses lying about.
Yes, quite right.
40 seconds for you, Sheila, on scraps, starting now.
I am positively manic about not wasting food, which reminds me of the story of the little girl whose mummy said, "Think of those poor starving children in India." And the child said, "Name one," which is rather the attitude of my daughter. However, I have a waste disposer, but I very seldom use it because it seems such an incredibly bad thing to do, to dispose of food in this way.
Peter, Clement Freud has challenged.
Repetition of food.
Yes, she said food twice. Clement, there are 12 seconds for you on scraps, starting now.
At Hackney Stadium, there is a dog called Scraps, who is totally incapable of running for more than 400 yards. And when entered in 525, he collapses.
That's one of those clever things that Clement Freud says. None of us here do anything about greyhound racing. We can't challenge him on the fact whether there is a dog called Scraps. I'm sure he's right. Sheila, it's your turn to begin. Blowing my top.
Oh.
Something that has happened many times in just a minute, and it might happen again. But we'd like you to talk on the subject, Sheila. 60 seconds starting now.
I don't have a top, but if I had one, I probably would blow it rather than use a whip, because I consider that's rather kinky.
Clement Freud has challenged.
Repetition of rather.
Did she say rather twice?
Yes.
Yes, she did. What a pity. 50 seconds for you on blowing my top, Clement, starting now.
It is, I suppose, the extremity of your body which you can blow more readily than the other. But also blowing my top.
Derek Nimmo has challenged. Right.
Deviation, I don't think necessarily you can blow your top more than the other.
Do I put it to the audience? Clement Freud was being devious in the thoughts that he was arousing, and therefore we have to give Derek Nimmo a correct challenge and say there are 41 seconds left, starting now.
Well, when I blow my top in this game, I shout abuse at the chairman. I say, "Go away, Parsons, you great big oaf, you big fat fool sitting up there in your shirt sleeves. Why did you ask permission?"
Clement Freud has challenged.
Repetition of big. Great big oaf and big fat fool.
What is it?
The audience are clapping! Because the only reason he challenged was so he could repeat the phrases about Clement Freud, you have a correct but foul challenge, which I have to give you a point and say you have 32 seconds on blowing my top, starting now.
This is a phrase or expression given to mean anger or losing your temper, something I do very seldom indeed, because I have complete equanimity. Many people have remarked on this, even to the point...
Derek Nimmo has
challenged. He hasn't got complete equanimity.
No, of course he has.
Nasty, surly, sort of up and down, miserable, hateful, horrid,
very
ghastly.
And I mumble.
Sue Annie mumbles with it.
Yes. And not only that, his hyphenated mumbles. And I've heard very few people remark on his equanimity. Good gracious. No, Derek, you're absolutely right. I would have given it to anybody. I would have given it against Clement Freud, whoever challenged on that occasion anyway. But I think your challenge was correct, Derek, and justified, because I do like to try and be fair. And there are 18 seconds blowing my top, starting now.
That loathsome idiot sitting up there on the podium. How can he come here every week?
Repetition. He said that before.
Foul abuse against the chairman. Yes, absolutely. Peter, you have a point and 15 seconds on blowing my top, Peter, starting now.
Can be very relaxing and rewarding experience. Makes you feel more at ease and you feel unburdened.
Clement Freud has challenged.
He's felt twice.
Yes. You were feeling too much, Peter. You got the feeling, but you spoke it. You used the word more than once. Clement, a correct challenge. And you have 8 seconds for blowing my top starting now.
Blowing my top about the invidious behavior of the chairman of this panel is something I would never be a party to, because...
Well, that gentle thought of Clement Freud's gave him an extra point because he said it while the whistle went, and so he moved forward. And I have to tell you, we have just had the last round, and we come to the final decision. Clement Freud just didn't make enough points to overtake our leader. Peter Jones finished a good fourth, Sheila Hancock an admirable third, Clement Freud a very narrow second behind this week's winner, Derek Nimmo. You've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute. From all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by David Hatch.
We present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Peter Jones and Jean Marsh in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Hello and welcome once again to Just a Minute. And once again we have one less experienced and 3 very experienced players of the game who are going to try and speak for just a minute, if they can, on some unlikely subject without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject on the card which is in front of me. And we'll begin the show this week with Derek Nimmo. Derek, would you talk on the subject of rude words for 60 seconds, starting now?
Sucks to you and run off and push off and clear away are fairly rude words, but it can be used, I suppose, in a different sense of the word, in the form of rude meaning cross or crucifix. The rood screen, as you know, is that which separated the main aisle of the church from the choir, and there the great 2 pieces of wood that go like that was stuck behind it.
Kenneth Williams is
Deviation, he's doing funny voices. That's a disgrace. You're supposed to use a normal voice.
I know, Kenneth.
I'm always normal. He's doing abnormal voices.
He's doing your turn, in fact, isn't he?
Yeah, no, hey? Such things.
Well, what is the basis of your challenge?
Deviation.
Why?
Because you shouldn't deviate from your normal voice.
I think you have committed yourself out of your own mouth. That's an incorrect challenge. It's a lovely idea, and especially coming from you, Kenneth. I disagree with it, so he can do whatever he likes as long as he doesn't deviate from the subject on the card. There are 35 seconds on rude words with you, Derek, still, starting now.
A quarter of an acre is a particularly rude word in the sense that it means perch or pole. But I suppose that one could think in terms of crude, vulgar, primitive.
Peter Jones, a challenge.
Repetition of crude.
Yes, indeed. And Peter, correct challenge there. And you now take over the subject.
No, I didn't say crude.
You said crude in the first
rude,
section. Crude crucifix
screen.
Or something, you said.
No.
Well, that's what it sounded like. The diction isn't too good, I know.
I must say, I thought you did say crude before. It's very difficult.
Well,
do you think he said crude before? No! They're always the final judges. Derek, you keep the subject, and there are 20 seconds on rude words starting now.
I think that it's great fun to go behind Nicholas Parsons' back and say something absolutely incredibly obscene to him, like, "You great big fathead, why don't you improve your chairmanship of this panel? Otherwise we'll have you discarded and put there in the throne where you rightfully belong, Kenneth Williams."
I don't appreciate the applause. Derek, you've got 3 points, because you're the only one to score at the end of that round. And Kenneth, you have the subject now. Will you start with my secret? 60 seconds beginning now.
It's impossible to reveal. That is why it is my secret.
Peter Jones has challenged.
If it's impossible to reveal it, he might as well pass on to somebody else.
A good challenge, and the audience applause tells me that probably you deserve a point, a bonus point for a good challenge, but he was not deviating from the subject on the card, so he stays with my secret with 56 seconds to go, starting now.
While I cannot tell of it, I can speak about the reason that it exists. Now, it comes under the heading of talent. This is not something which can be acquired. Oh, no. It's given, and it occurs at birth. Indeed, it was once remarked, the public may know a lot of things about a man, but they constitute his reputation. As to his character, his creator alone can know of that. I should never contradict such a judgment uttered by an ancient...
Peter Jones has challenged.
Repetition of contradict.
Yeah, you did.
I haven't said contradict.
I don't think he said contradict before.
I thought he did.
No,
You think everything you do just to get points. Well, I
just
wanted
trying.
to stop him just droning on and on. I had to say something.
He had to get, yes, you're quite right. There was
boring me into the ground here.
only 5.5 seconds to go, so he tried to get in, but he didn't succeed, Kenneth. So a wrong challenge, another point to you, 5.5 seconds. My secret starting now.
Rubbing in a little witch hazel and then applying the cotton wool, which keeps it moist. I always...
On this occasion, Kenneth Williams was speaking when the whistle went, which, as you know, means he gets the extra point. And Kenneth, you have got 3 points, and you have leapt into the lead alongside Derek Nimmo at the end of that round. And Jean Marsh, we've yet to hear from you, and we will begin the next round for us. And the subject that Ian Messett has decided on for you is pyramid selling. I hope you know something about it, because we'd like you to talk about it for 60 seconds, starting now.
There are many forms of pyramid selling. Of course, pharaohs never sold their pyramids. In the days of yore in ancient Egypt, I won't specify the date because the erudite Kenneth Williams will buzz me in case it's wrong, pyramids were sold, but not, as I said before, by the head people. They were sold by soothsayers who would order an enormous and costly and good one, and then in about 20 years, when it was nearly ready, they would go up in the world and maybe get a better job upriver, and they would put it up for sale. They would simply place a sign outside in hieroglyphics saying, "For sale, unfurnished, owner gone abroad." And when they'd gone upriver, they would start building another one. There is another kind of pyramid selling.
Peter Jones is challenged.
Repetition of another.
Quite right.
And
I was wondering who was going to be the first to be a cad, and I thought it'd be you.
Peter, there are 14 seconds left on pyramid selling, starting now.
It's a kind of commercialized form of chain letter on the principle that everything multiplies and more people can get positions and create wealth for the people on the lower...
Peter, you have leapt into the lead at the end of that round alongside Kenneth Williams and Derek Nimmo. fact, you're all equal again. And Jean Marsh is trailing just behind you.
Some are less equal than others.
The three men are equal at the moment, and you are on your own, Jean, which is as it should be. Peter, would you begin the next round, please? Laying an egg. Probably haven't any personal experience from the biological point of view, but we've all had professional experience of that, and maybe you can tell us about one of yours. In 60 seconds, starting now.
Well, I have done this, theatrically speaking, in a number of places, because we call a flop laying an egg.
Kenneth Williams is challenged.
Deviation, we don't call it any other kind. I've never heard this.
Well, you've had so little to do with flops. I've been in them all my theatrical life.
I thought
That's
you were
what they call laying an egg. He laid an egg in Newcastle, or he laid an egg...
If you have a flop of any kind, you can say that you laid an egg. It's a correct expression, Kenneth. Even, obviously, as Peter says, you've had such success all your life, you don't know what it means.
Until tonight.
So, Peter
well,
has a
it's an
point.
insult I'll have to swallow.
50 seconds left on laying an egg with you, Peter, starting now.
But thinking of our feathered friends, it must be incredibly difficult. I suppose the best way, if one were one, would be to stand with one's legs firmly
Jean Marsh
apart.
is challenged. Why?
An awful lot of ones. I mean, I've so far counted 5 since you restarted.
Well, I only counted 4, but we'll give it to you anyway.
Yes.
Jean, you have a point for a correct challenge, and there are 38 seconds on laying an egg starting now.
In my acres in Oxfordshire, Bledlow Ridge, which Kenneth Williams has often visited for luncheon, I have a few chickens, and they do lay eggs. They lay beautiful ones, dark brown, firm ones with deep yellow yolks. And I know...
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Hesitation on the grounds of a general pack-up.
Derek, I agree with your challenge. There are 21 seconds on laying an egg starting now.
Well, to lay an egg must be much easier for a bird, I suppose, but a terrible strain, I would have thought, particularly if one happened to be either a kiwi or an ostrich, because the size of the eggs are quite enormous. And can you imagine these poor little dear feathered creatures crouching?
Jean Marsh was challenged just when you got down to the crouch.
Ostriches are enormous, poor little feathered creatures.
I quite agree, Jean, and you got in again very cleverly. 3 seconds to go. Laying an egg starting now.
I probably will lay an egg later on in the programme.
Jean may be new to the game, but she's got the trick of getting in before the whistle. She got the point for speaking when the whistle. She's leapt forward alongside Kenneth into second place. She's equal with him. They're both 1 point behind Derek and Peter, who are equal in the lead. And Derek, will you begin the next round? The subject is common sense. And will you talk on it for 60 seconds, starting now?
I have absolutely no common sense. In fact, I'm incredibly foolish. I've traded the whole of my professional career on being absolute total idiot. When people meet me in the street, they say, "What, oh, fruit, aren't you round the twist?" And I say, "I'm afraid I quite agree with you. I am rather stupid."
Jean Marshall's challenge, why?
Repetition of stupid.
Yes, is perfectly correct. Jean, you have 41 seconds on common sense, starting now.
Common sense in my book means looking after the common, which is very near my acres in Oxfordshire. A lot of people park their cars on...
Derek has challenged first.
Showing off. She keeps talking about her acres in Oxfordshire all the time.
She may have been showing off, but she wasn't deviating from the subject on the card, so Jean, you get another point and 31 seconds on common sense, starting now.
The trouble with the common is that it's available for all the passers-by, trippers and picnickers. They drive...
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Snobbery. Doesn't want the common people like me to go on her common.
Not at all, that's why it's called the common.
Ridge snobbery.
But she was still not deviating from the subject on the card of common sense, and so she keeps it with another point and 26 seconds, starting now.
I'm thrilled that all the common people should use the common, if only they use their sense at the same time. I don't like them parking their cars on it. They leave ruts in the common.
Derek Nimmo's challenged again.
Hesitation.
Yes, he's got a point for that. He has 16 seconds on common sense, starting now.
In future, I shall have sufficient common sense not to challenge Miss Marsh. It's quite obvious that the chairman is nearly always on her.
Kenneth Williams, a challenge.
Deviation is discussing the chairman and Jean Marsh, not common sense. We're deviating, I'm afraid.
Yes, it's obvious. It's not obvious that the chairman is on the side of Jean Marsh. In fact, he's been trying to be as fair as he can. Aren't I being as fair as I can?
Precisely, yeah.
So that is definite deviation. I agree with you, Kenneth. You have a point, and there are 9 seconds on common sense starting now.
This is the kind of sense attributed to the non-specialist, as opposed to, shall we say, philosopher or mathematician or...
Kenneth was then speaking as the whistle went, gained the extra point, and a very interesting competition once again, because Peter's gone back into 4th place. He's 1 point behind Derek Nimmo and Kenneth Williams, who are equal in 2nd place. And Jean Marsh is our leader with 1 point ahead. And Kenneth, you have the subject now. Igor Stravinsky, would you talk about him? Why'd you laugh? He knows a lot about all these people. That's why Mr. thinks the subject's for him. Igor Stravinsky, and there are 60 seconds starting now.
Well, all I do know about him is that when the Marinsky were doing these ballets under Kostyaghilev, he did the music for Petrushka. And he settled, as you all know, in America because he took up that country's national ballad.
Derek Nimmo's challenged.
Hesitation, but I don't really want the subject very
All
often.
right, then I don't think it was hesitation.
Oh, well, no
so
good.
Kenneth
that's
keeps
fine.
it, and there are 32 seconds on Igor Stravinsky. Kenneth starting now.
And he was born in the 19th century and influenced greatly by Aubenberg and Schoenberg with the 12-tone scale. As
Peter Jones is challenged.
He wasn't born in the 19th century.
he
Was
was 18-something is the 19th
18-something.
Oh, was he?
He's still...
I thought he was born in 1901, I thought he was.
No.
Oh.
No.
You're not certain, now are you?
I don't know his exact age. I know he was born
1890.
before the turn of the
Really?
century. 20 seconds left on Igor Stravinsky. Kenneth starting now.
Perhaps one of the greater of his neoclassic.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Repetition of greater, I'm afraid.
Yes, we did have a greater before. So this time...
Oh, that was reference to Greater London. Which is hyphenated, isn't it?
18 seconds with you, Derek, on Igor Stravinsky starting now.
And as they so wisely used to say, the greatest by far in the ranks of the Tsar is Igor Stravinsky.
Kenneth Williams is challenged.
He's quoting a dirty piece of doggerel, which is deviation, and the rhyme is not about Igor, it's about Ivor Stravinsky. So therefore, it's deviation of the worst kind and extremely corrupting.
Yes.
Juvenile members of this
Yes,
audience.
it is. And you've got a point, Kenneth, and there are 10 seconds on Igor Stravinsky starting now.
The Symphony of Psalms is one of his better-known works, also in memoriam to JFK, which was indeed one of the greatest tributes possibly ever been paid.
Well, Igor Stravinsky helped Kenneth to take a commanding lead over everybody else at the end of that round. Jean Marsh, will you begin the next round? And the subject is things on the top of the wardrobe. Would you talk on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
I don't like to think about the things that are on top of my wardrobe. I throw them up there in a bad temper. They usually cost a lot of money and are very nasty. In my occasional lapses of good taste, very rare, as Kenneth Williams will tell you. If I don't...
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Repetition of I and hesitation.
It's a tough challenge. Anyway, Derek, you have 45 seconds on the things on the top of the wardrobe, starting now.
Well, one of the things that I find very often on the top of my wardrobe is myself, because on hot summer evenings I climb onto it because I have a little fan light near the top of my...
Peter Jones has challenged.
Repetition of I.
Well, I have to be accurate within the terms of the game. Peter, correct challenge, 35 seconds on the things on the top of the wardrobe, starting now.
Well, out of sight is out of mind.
Derek Nimmo's challenge.
I couldn't resist the
Hesitation.
Two out.
You actually hesitate on your own challenge,
Oh, no, dear.
31 seconds with you, Derek, on things on the top of the wardrobe, starting now.
Also, I keep my bucket and spade there because it's terribly useful in the summer months when I rush down to Clacton. I have also my shrimping net. Now, this is terribly important. I don't know whether many of you are interested in crustacea, but if you do have one of these aforementioned pieces of equipment, if you keep it on the top of your wardrobe, the dust collects on the top of the wardrobe with this piece of machinery and forms a very fine fluffy mesh which
Peter Jones is challenged.
Repetition of piece of equipment and piece of
absolutely right.
machinery.
Well done, Peter.
And there are 6 seconds, Peter. Another point to you as well for a correct challenge. Things on the top of the wardrobe, starting now.
Thinking of old tennis shoes and long forgotten hospital equipment. 6 seconds, I go a bit
Well, Derek Nimmo and
yes.
Peter Jones both move forward in that round, but they're still behind our leader, who is still Kenneth Williams. Peter. You did bring the friends after all, Kenneth. Peter, the subject with you now is euphoria. Don't always associate it with you, but more with Kenneth, actually. But anyway, will you talk on the subject for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, this is a state of being which can be induced artificially with marijuana or pot, I suppose. Some people can make themselves feel euphoric by drinking or even eating huge meals. And others rely more on criticisms, always.
Jean Marsh is challenged.
Hesitation.
Yes, there was. Yes. Once he got to the criticism, I couldn't quite see how criticism could give you
Well,
a
I meant
euphoria.
favourable criticism.
Yes, I know. And you coming to keep going, you suddenly
Yes.
realised you'd gone up an alley you couldn't return from and you hesitated.
Yes, that puts it in a nutshell, really.
Jean Marsh, I agree with your challenge, and you have 36.5 seconds on euphoria, Jean, starting now.
Euphoria is an almost permanent state of my being. I was born lucky. I was born
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
She was born twice, the
Yes,
second
I
coming.
Because if you were quick, Jean, you'd say you were being reborn the second time. But anyway, you did repeat the word, so 29 seconds on euphoria with you, Derek, starting now.
On 25th of July, 1971, there were 4 ballet dancers walking down the Strand, and this policeman shouted out, "Euphoria, come on!" And they walked towards him, and one of them said, "And what's the matter, darling?" And he said, "I want to know what you're walking down like that for." And they said, "Well..."
Peter Jones has challenged.
Repetition of walking.
Yeah. And we missed the payoff. What was it, Derek?
Well, I haven't made it up then.
All right, so you've got the subject now, Pete, dear. Euphoria. And there are 13 seconds starting now.
It's a nice state of mind to be in.
Derek Nimmo's
repetition of mind. When he was talking about, aids to euphoria before he talked about state of mind. You know that.
Yes, you did say about a state of mind when you were
I didn't say
talking
state
about
of
it
mind.
before. 10 seconds with you, Derek, on euphoria, starting now.
This tremendous sense of well-being and ecstasy can be induced by very simple things.
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
Deviation. Euphoria has nothing to do with the sense of well-being. It's to do with the sense that you have appalling lassitude. It's nothing to do with well-being. A lot of people suffering from euphoria are in a very, very bad way indeed.
Kenneth, maybe they are, but really most people think of euphoria as a great sense of well-being. And I disagree with your challenge.
Well, I think it's ludicrous. I've come all this way. I mean, my viewpoint, it doesn't seem to me even to be respected.
Oh, it's respected, Kenneth. It's respected, but I disagree with it because I've got to try and be accurate. And there are 2 seconds with Derek on euphoria starting now.
So he said euphoria, and he said, "Can't count the 5 of those."
No! That was a rather clever bit because Peter actually did press his buzzer, but because Derek had repeated euphoria before, but he didn't get in before the whistle, so Derek got the extra point for speaking when the whistle went, and he's moved into the lead ahead of Kenneth Williams at the end of that round. Kenneth, it's your turn to begin. The subject is my station. 60 seconds starting now.
Of course, I don't own a railway station, but I presume this refers to my position in life. It is a humble station. As this subject obviously could be something of a conundrum, it would be best to discuss Paddington, which used to be the GWR. Chocolate and gold was the livery they wore. How beautiful to take the Cornish Riviera Express and see the beauty of the English coastline at your elbow. And while you were having your meal, often some of the best wines that were laid down in this country came from the cellar of that incredible railway company. Would that they were all private today, and that the rightful owners had restored to them the property that the government have wickedly taken from under their noses. Zip past.
Well,
this is a party political broadcast on behalf of the Conservative Party.
I was saying almost the same thing, but it's all right.
I mean, I had these shares in Hooks and Eyes. They went to nothing when Zip Fasteners come in. Nobody uses the Hooks and Eyes,
I
do
wouldn't
they?
advertise your politics anymore, but it was a very partisan speech which went down extremely well, even though they didn't know what they were cheering for, except they were obviously cheering you. And you did jolly well. Actually, you were away from my station. You were on about the GWR and the wines laid down. My station...
Those wines
wasn't
were
King's
placed
Cross
on
is
the
your
train.
station, and we all know that anyway. It's the old LNER.
No, it isn't.
I'm the same age as you, Kenneth.
I always understood that King's Cross was the Great Northern. I beg your pardon.
Yes, can I give the final score now?
Oh.
At the end of this particular game,
If you're
Gene
the
Marsh...
same age as Kenneth, you must go to different plastic surgeons.
Yes.
I'd love to know who do you think's got the good plastic surgeons? I'll give you the final score. Gene Marsh, returning to join us again, did extremely well. Didn't quite beat the chaps, but that was to be expected. She finished in both fourth place, just 1 point behind Peter Jones, who was a few points behind Kenneth Williams, who with the last final euphoric flourish didn't quite manage to overtake our leader, who was once again this week's winner, Derek Nimmo. I hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute. From all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by John Castles.
We present Kenneth Williams, Clement Freud, Peter Jones and Andre Melle in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hello and welcome once again to Just a Minute. And once again, I'm going to ask our four contestants if they can speak for just a minute on some subject that I will give them without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from the subject on the card. And we begin with the show this week with Kenneth Williams. Kenneth, can you talk on Stephen Leacock? 60 seconds. 60 seconds starting now.
Educated at McGill University and known for the economic prosperity of Great Britain, a volume which I must say bears the imprint, or shall I say influence, of Milton.
And Clement Freud is challenged.
Milton.
Milton.
No, I'm thinking of Maynard Keynes, and I was thinking of Milton Keynes, which is a city. That's where I got
we
mixed
don't
up.
mind what you were thinking
understand?
of, Kenneth.
That's what I was after. I was after the name of the economist, you see, because Leacock was a very famous economist. I mean, he's known really nowadays for his humorous stuff, but actually
Kenneth,
he began as a
you've
very
lost the
serious
subject.
economist. What?
Save it in case you get the subject back. You lost it to Clement Freud with the correct
Yes, but I mean, it's still better if I go on, because I can see that woman is agog to hear more. I can see she look at her, she's gone red. Look at her. She's expecting to hear more. Do you see what I mean?
Yes,
rather
we want to
I gave
hear
her.
some more, but not now.
Oh.
Clement Freud has a point for a correct challenge, and there are 40 seconds on Stephen Leacock Clement starting now.
I think one of my favorite stories of his is called The Man Who Knew Coolidge, and concerns an individual, probably the author himself, who at university had come across the President of the United States and realized instantly how great the man was, because he once went up to him...
Peter Jones has challenged.
A repetition of man.
Yes, there was more than one man. And so, Peter, you have a correct challenge, and 24 seconds on Stephen Leacock, starting now.
Well, I'm terribly sorry to have missed this story about the man who knew Coolidge. However, there are others, and
Andre Melly has challenged.
No hesitation about others.
Yes, it was a very sharp one, Andre, but as you haven't been with us for a while, I naturally will give it to you.
Do you mean if she'd been with us longer, it would have been less sharp?
Yes. No, Clement, I don't mean that. I mean that as it was a sharp challenge, I may not have given it to you or to Kenneth, but I will give it to Andre. With 16 seconds, Andre, on Stephen Leacock, starting now.
The only Stephen Leacock I ever knew was about 8 and had red hair and freckles and kissed me in the locker room of the prep school.
Deviation. This is disgraceful. I've not come here. I've not come here to listen to the confessions of a Scarlet Woman. What's all this about being kissed?
She wasn't Scarlet Woman at the age of 8.
Well, she said he had red hair, didn't she?
He had the red hair, not Andre.
Well, it's scarlet enough, isn't it? I mean, this is a family show. I've come all the way from Great Portland Street.
I still think that Andre was not deviating from Stephen Leacock, and even if she was in the locker room, she hadn't yet become Scarlet. Maybe you were embarrassed and became Scarlet at the thoughts. There are 9 seconds on Stephen Leacock, Andre, starting now.
Stephen Leacock was very embarrassed. I think he'd been dared to do it, and he didn't enjoy it very much. I remember it well myself, as it was the first time.
Clement Freud has challenged.
Repetition of remember.
Yes, you did remember before,
I
I'm
did.
afraid, Andre. Clement's got in with only 3 seconds to go on Stephen Leacock, starting now.
A man went...
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
Hesitation.
No, don't be wrong.
Was, definitely, wasn't it? Yes, they agreed. They all agreed.
No, I have to be fair. 2.5 seconds on Stephen Leacock, Clement, starting now.
The manager of the bank into which...
That's a disgrace. That's nothing to do with Stephen Leacock.
Clement Freud got an extra point then for speaking when the whistle went, and at the end of the first round has a lead, quite a commanding lead over the others. Clement, it's your turn to begin, and we'd like you to talk on the subject of aestheticism for 60 seconds, if you can, starting now.
Aestheticism is the sort of word which is in at the moment, in that ecology...
Andre Melly has challenged.
In that inn, 2 inns.
Yes, the in was so definite, I will allow it to Andre and say that you have 54 seconds, Andre, on aestheticism, starting now.
My admiration of Kenneth Williams' nostrils could be called pure aestheticism. They are not of this earth. They are delicate in their beauty and make me think of higher things. The curve, the aristocratic, wide edifice.
Who stopped her? Who dared stop her? Who dared? She was doing lovely, wasn't she?
Peter Jones stopped her.
I did. It was getting up my nose.
Yeah, yes, it would, wouldn't it? Because it's not in as the subject, that's why. That's quite infuriating.
So why do you challenge, Peter?
Nothing to do with aestheticism.
Of course it is. Have a look at my conch, mate. You can see what it's got to do with it.
Well, I quite agree. I mean, it's debatable.
No, you mustn't agree. What are you talking about? My nose has been compared with Ellen of Troy. Ellen of Troy.
I think it's appalling.
How dare you want to shut your mouth, mate? I'll get you after.
What?
I'll get you after.
I mean, in these days of plastic surgery, there's no excuse for anyone walking about like that.
What a mean advantage. I had to have that operation, mate, because I couldn't breathe through either passage. Both of them were bunged. I was bunged up completely. That's why I had to have a rebore. I had to have a rebore
Kenneth,
right the way through.
We weren't talking about your rebore.
We were talking about your bore, actually.
Andre was not deviating from the subject, so she keeps it. And there are 38 seconds left, Andre, starting now.
I suppose I have to go on with this subject, which in a way I felt I had perhaps. And
Peter, Clement Freud is challenged. So what's your challenge?
Hesitation?
Yes, indeed. And there are 32 seconds, Clement, on aestheticism starting now.
Perhaps a field of daffodils at dusk sums up this better than anything else. I remember once calling into the north part of Great Yarmouth, and there, where the sand dunes ended and the Dutch had planted bulbs, they sprang up yellow and fervently, passionately beautiful. And
Clement, Kenneth Williams, your
a
challenge.
deviation. This has nothing to do with aesthetics. It's to do with a trip to
You
Yarmouth.
mean that
isn't it?
the Dutch planted bulbs on near the beach at Great Yarmouth?
Yeah, what were the Dutch doing in Yarmouth? That's another thing.
They
That's
didn't.
deviation.
In Little Holland they planted their
Of course,
things.
Little Holland nothing to do with Yarmouth.
There's
It's all
no
deviation.
bulbs near on the beach at Great Yarmouth.
Yes, deviation.
Yes, of course, Kenneth. You have 10 seconds on aestheticism starting now.
I suppose it would be best summed up in the words of William Morris, who did so much to the Art Nouveau of England, the pre-Raphaelite school, a great deal, to his beautiful Renaissance.
Are you all right with that? Kenneth Williams was speaking then when the whistle went, so he gets that extra point, which, of course, I forgot to mention.
Does that mean I'm in the lead?
No, but you're catching up with Clement Freud, who's still in the lead. Andre Merritt's in second place. But Peter's turn to begin. Peter, innuendo. A great deal of that in our programme. Would you talk on the subject? 60 seconds starting now.
Yes, I don't really like it very much. It's a kind of sly way of making digs at people, and I was...
Kenneth Williams' challenge.
Well, hesitation,
I
and,
think so, Kenneth. Yes, 52 seconds on innuendo, Kenneth, starting now.
No, I don't think that what Mr. Peter Jones...
Clement Freud is challenged.
Hesitation.
No, I disagree with that one. 50 seconds on innuendo with you, Kenneth, starting now.
Innuendo can be the source of a lot of humour, and some of it very pleasant indeed, because it takes the place of an open insult, the kind of sheer, malignant, malevolent rudeness which is so often indulged in by the illiterate and the comic manqué, that I find this almost, so to speak, a safety valve wherein the imagination is allowed full rein and we can soar. Yes, you see, somebody else feels this too. The incredible
Clement Freud is challenged again.
Repetition.
What?
If somebody else felt it too.
All right, a very good challenge, a good laugh, but we won't take the subject away. We won't give any points for that. Leave the subject with Kenneth with 9 seconds to go on innuendo starting now.
And, of course, it has been...
Clement Freud is
He
challenged.
said, of course, before.
I know he has, and he often
It's parts
says...
of speech, dear. You've got to say and.
Oh, it's very difficult. You have to watch your of courses. So, Clement, that was a correct challenge with 7 seconds on innuendo starting now.
When I saw you the other night with 3 ladies, none of which, as far as I know, were your wife.
Clement Freud got an extra point then again for speaking when the whistle went, and he's increased his lead at the end of that round. Andre Melli, your turn to begin. The subject is people I like. Would you talk on that? 60 seconds starting now.
All the people I like, I'm afraid, have to have one thing in common, and that is that they have to like me. I'm a Virgo, if you know what I mean, being born in September, and one of the things about us is that we do like to be liked very much. People who think that I am...
Clement Freud.
Hesitation.
40 seconds on people I like, Clement, starting now.
On the other hand, antelopes I can't stand. People are absolutely all right. Some of my very best friends belong to the human race. When you get to an elephant or rhinoceros, nay, let alone a rat, mouse, or kangaroo, I'm very much less in favour altogether, but people I like. To begin with, all those in the HD classified London directory are particularly close to my heart. But even the E to K, I wouldn't speak against.
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
2 twos. A to B, E to K.
All right.
Well,
A tough
you have
challenge.
a wealth of applause behind you there.
A tough challenge, but it was legitimate, so I'll give it to you, Kenneth. And there are 9.5
you can't
seconds.
repeat.
What?
T-O twice.
You got me for of course, and of course it's just as much a part of speech as two. So there, do you understand? I'm going to come right back. Do you think I'm going to sit here taking it, lying down?
Yes. Well done. You've made your point. The audience are with you. 9.5 seconds. People I like, Kenneth, starting now.
People I like are forthcoming. They have no inhibitions at all. They say, hello, darling, come right in, put your feet up and have a cup of tea. There's no question about it.
Well, at the end of that round, Kenneth Williams, speaking when the whistle went...
Has leapt into the lead. Go on, say it. I'm in the lead.
Not yet. You're still in second place. So there's still a chance. Kenneth, it's your turn to begin. The subject, getting into trouble. 60 seconds starting now.
When I landed in Bombay, I was taken to a transit camp. Kalyan was the name of it. The night was boiling hot, the kind of tropical heat to which I was not used. I was put on armory guard duty. We had to pace a perimeter, meet the other sentry, say all was well, and continue the guard duty. I had a fag. I know it was wrong, but I couldn't help myself because the nerves were telling on me. And suddenly this officer came up and he said, are you smoking? And I said, oh yes, well, I'm so nervous I couldn't help myself. He says the heat. He said, well, you're on a charge.
You've been challenged, you know that,
Oh,
don't
my.
you? Peter Jones.
Great
What was your
nit he
challenge,
is. Just
Peter?
a
Well-
story. What a great nit, isn't
He did repeat several things.
Such as?
Heat was the last thing.
Yes.
And he repeated
I didn't. I
before
said it
that.
was hot at first, and I said I was not used to such heat.
No, he
No, you
challenged...
did, but you see, I was very interested in the story, really.
He was trying to let you go, but once you repeated guard, he felt you couldn't.
No, that was a hyphenated guard duty as opposed to guard.
We've had this before last
Guard
week.
duty is hyphenated.
Yeah, you have repeated yourself, Kenneth. I'm afraid I have to give it to Peter Jones. 32 seconds left. Getting into trouble, Peter, starting now.
You can easily get into trouble by doing absolutely nothing. Merely staying in bed, refusing to pay your income tax, not answering the door, or picking up the telephone, going out, pretending not to be in, or alternatively, if you happen to be married in the blessed state...
Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition of in.
All right, Clement, I gave in against you last time. I will give it to you this time, and you have 10 seconds on getting into trouble, starting now.
The best way is to go into a bank and steal a lot of money, alternatively gold, silver, platinum, copper, zinc, tin.
Peter Jones is challenged.
You can't steal zinc in a bank.
Well, this is one of those difficult decisions because he did say...
Well, I don't think so.
Please. No, he did say or alternatively. So, and therefore, it's only your imagination which decides, was it in a bank or was it alternatively outside?
And my imagination decided it was in the bank. That's
Well,
what he
all
meant
right,
to say.
It's an impossible decision for me to make.
No, of
because
course
the
it isn't.
Audience, I'm going to put it to you. There's only half a second to go, so there's a lot of points to be made. If you agree with Peter's challenge, will you cheer for him? And if you disagree with his challenge, will you boo for Clement Freud? And will you all do it together now? The boos have it. Clement Freud was alternatively either in or out of the bank stealing zinc. Half a second, getting into trouble, Clement, starting now.
Six.
So the Clement Freud fan club is obviously in, probably all from Hackney or somewhere. And Clement has increased his lead at the end of that round. Peter, your turn to begin. The subject, presence of mind. Will you talk on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
Oh, it's a wonderful gift, presence of mind. Absence of mind, of course, isn't a very nice thing to have. It's the opposite of it. But if you're climbing and you are falling down from the side of a mountain and you happen to remember or are able to think clearly about the things that you'd like to grab before gravity pulls you towards the earth, then presence of mind is a remarkable gift. And
Kenneth Williams is challenged.
Gift twice, I'm afraid.
Yes, you
Oh,
said
yes,
it right at the
that's right,
beginning.
yes.
Kenneth, you have the subject of presence of mind with 35 seconds left, starting now.
It's rather a misnomer, because if any civilized person is talking, obviously mind has to be inherent in their thought. Otherwise, we'd hear the ravings of lunatics. It's one of those sort of euphemisms which we come to accept in everyday language because of inherent laziness and a lack of an extensive vocabulary. Of course, we all can be called reasonably sane, otherwise, presumably.
Andre Melly has challenged.
I don't think we can all be called reasonably sane at all in this deviation.
Oh, I think we can all be called reasonably sane, or we can all be called reasonably mad. So I think it's quite a legitimate remark. It wasn't deviating, and certainly from the subject on the card. Kenneth, you have another point, and there are 8 seconds left, starting now.
It is typical that I was interfered with in my flow.
Peter Jones has challenged.
No one has interfered with him, they just challenged
I said
him, that's
interfere
all.
within my flow.
Well, I don't know who Flo is, and I don't want to know. I don't want to hear all about these dubious women that you bring along from time to time.
Obviously, you filled this place with your mates, haven't you?
So, what is your challenge, Peter?
I forget now. I don't know what it was, but it was terribly boring, wasn't it?
Yes, but I don't think it was deviated from the subject on the card. Kenneth, you have another point with
Quite
5 seconds to go, starting now.
Presence of mind is something gentlemen possess, and very few women have.
Kenneth got a number of points in that round, including one for speaking when the whistle went, and he has leapt forward.
Oh, God!
And he is now in the lead.
Yes.
Alongside Clement Freud.
Oh, yeah.
But you're well out there. Anyway, Andre Melly, your turn to begin. The subject is getting rid of ants. Can you talk about that for 60 seconds, starting now?
This is something you really have to do if you've got them. We had a large quantity in a small cottage we had in the country, and my husband was going through a kind of Buddhist reverence for life stage and was very torn, not knowing what to do about these particular insects. He asked them politely to go away. They took no notice, and one morning...
Kenneth Williams...
Deviation, he couldn't have asked them politely.
He did?
Because they wouldn't understand what politeness was.
That's why they didn't go away.
Exactly.
And this is probably one of the more less
That's right.
reasonably sane people that Andre was referring to. So, Andre, you weren't deviating with the subject
No,
of the card. And
absolutely
you have,
true.
38 seconds on getting rid of ants, starting now.
I have no soft feelings for these particular small creatures.
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
Deviation, she should have. They're all part of the creation. We should love everything, shouldn't we? She's got no time for an ant. That's nice, isn't it? That's nice.
Listen, whether she's got any time for an ant or not, she can say it, and she can still say it whatever you may think about it and not deviate from the subject. There are 18 seconds on getting rid of ants, Andre, starting now.
Those of us who have a particular affection for the creature in question...
Peter Jones has challenged.
Repetition of particular.
Yes, indeed, that is correct, Peter. And you have now 17 seconds, Peter, on getting rid of ants, starting now.
Face up to them, look them squarely in the eye, and say to them...
Kenneth...
Deviation, you couldn't possibly look an ant in the eye.
Kenneth, I agree. If you faced up to them, you couldn't look an ant square in the eye.
I haven't got an idea. They move on an antennae system, which has nothing to do with the eye, as we know the eye.
Well, all right. Look, I'm on your side, so don't try and make it...
Oh, you're on his side. Well, that's fine.
Oh, they never let me finish. Peter Jones has now left the studio. Oh, he's come back. That's good. Yeah. I'm on his side on this particular challenge.
No, I see.
Yes. Kenneth, I agree with your challenge, which is really what is important, and you have 14 seconds on getting rid of ants, starting now.
Well, it's very simple. You take honey or sweet substances like treacle and such like, and spray...
Clement Freud has challenged.
Repetition of like. Like
Yes.
treacle and such like.
What a pity. It's a perfectly correct challenge.
What do you mean, what
What a pity. You see,
He's on Kenneth's side.
Oh, I
That's
see.
why
Yes,
it's a pity.
what
I'll
a
make
pity.
no bones about it. Clement Freud nearly always wins. Peter Jones wins a lot.
There's
Kenneth doesn't win
impartial
as much as the
chairman.
others. and
Thank you. You're very nice. You're absolutely truthful. I don't win a lot. And I think it's a disgrace.
He does.
Because I don't win because I haven't got a kind of superiority that he's got.
And being perfectly fair, it was a correct challenge, so Clement has six
Yes,
seconds.
and I think, honestly, Kenneth, I think you and the chairman are going to win this game.
6 seconds, Clement, on getting rid of ants, starting now. And Kenneth Williams has challenged.
I haven't. He's got my buzzer in his hand. I'm not...
So Clement Freud, to illustrate beyond any shadow of doubt that he is one of the most sporting players of the game...
No, he got hold of it by mistake, you great fool, he ran!
Picked up Kenneth's buzzer and challenged himself for hesitation, and I agree with the challenge, Kenneth. So you got the subject back with 6 seconds left on getting rid of ants, starting now.
Open your vacuum cleaner bag and put into it this sticky substance known as Veverella.
So with no help at all from the chairman, but with definite help from Clement Freud, Kenneth Williams has taken an undisputed lead at the end of that round. And Peter is Kenneth, it's your turn to begin. The subject, very apt one that EMS has thought of for you, effervescence. Will you effervesce as you talk about the subject of effervescence for 60 seconds, starting now?
This quality is in lemonade and in certain chemical constituents. Haldane, the eminent chemist, once remarked, "It is possible to analyze effervescent water until left with a number of components, but nothing you can drink." I thought it was very apt. Clapped him on the back in a jocular fashion. "Oh," I said, "you put your finger on it. You know the difference between soda water and the effort..."
Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition of water.
Yes, I have to allow that one, Kenneth. And Clement has another point, and he has 22 seconds on effervescence, starting now.
There used to be a phonetic alphabet in which effervescence was one of the jokes, and I mean this very light-heartedly, which followed such things as A for horses, which didn't make me laugh either.
Andre Melli has challenged.
There were 2 4s. There was the A one and the F of 4.
No, one was effervescence and the other was
F
A.
for vescent.
But the 4 is
word on
part
the
of the
card.
word. And anyways, it's effervescence, it's not 4.
You are rotten.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So Clement has another point for an incorrect challenge,
Yeah, it was
and
very
our
kind.
6 seconds left on effervescence, starting now.
So I said to this sparkling man who jumped up on my seat, clapping me on the back, saying, "Hello."
Well, I'm afraid we have no more time to play just a minute, and I have to tell you that being completely fair, as usual, Peter Jones finished in 4th place, but we heard from him to great effect. Andre finished in 2nd place, and we heard to her with tremendous effect. Kenneth was in great form, but Clement Freud just overtook him at the end again, I'm afraid. And once again, Clement Freud is this week's winner. We hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute from all of us here. Goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by Bob Oliver Rogers.
We present Kenneth Williams, Derek Nimmo, Clement Freud, and Amy MacDonald in Just a Minute. And as the minute waltz fades away, here to tell you about it is our chairman, Nicholas Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Hello and welcome to Just a Minute. Well, we are pleased to welcome back again this week Amy MacDonald, who's going to pit her wits against our 3 regular competitors of the game. And they're going to try and speak, as usual, if they can, for 1 minute on some subject that I'll give them without hesitation, without repetition, and without deviating from that subject, if they can. And we'll start the show with Kenneth Williams. Kenneth, can you talk now on my energy? 60 seconds starting now.
This is provided by the general metabolism of the body. Now, the food is imbibed, and the process of mastication ensures that the peptic juices get to work, and then it results in this enormous flooding, so to speak, of the reservoirs of energy, and bursts forth into the most fabulous utterances, both born of inspiration and of foreknowledge in the sense of preconceived, that which is put together because you know, roughly speaking, what you want these energies for, how you wish to concentrate, how you want to
Clement
really...
Freud has challenged you, I'm afraid.
What happened?
I challenged.
Clement Freud challenged you. Were going so well you could hardly stop you, actually.
The third
Kenneth.
energy, and energy.
Energy, my energy is on the card. You are allowed to repeat it 3 times, which he's done. He mustn't use it again, so he gets a point for a wrong challenge. He keeps the subject of my energy, and there are 32 seconds left, starting now.
Of course, on the occasions when you got to really push yourself into, say, a round of tennis. I don't know if it's called a round.
Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition of round.
Yes, this time I quite agree with your challenge, Clement, so you get a point, and you take over the subject of my energy, and there are 23 seconds left, starting now.
My energy is only limited. Some mornings I get up and I'm barely able to lift the teacup from the dressing table, and I'm totally weak, so that I can't take sugar. I've never, in fact, taken any sweetening because of my energy, which is sadly lacking.
And Amy MacDonald has challenged.
Hesitation.
I thought he kept going magnificently, actually,
I
Amy.
could tell he wasn't very confident.
Oh, I could tell that as well. He hadn't got very much energy.
Exactly, yes.
But he didn't actually hesitate, Amy, so well tried, because you did a Clement Freud. They almost got in before the whistle. There are 7 seconds left on my energy with you, Clement, starting now.
I barely crawl past 11s.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Repetition of barely. Barely had an energy, barely.
Yes, that is perfectly correct. Derek, you have a correct challenge, a point for that. And there are 5 seconds with you now on my energy, starting now.
My energy is derived solely from the consumption of glucose tablets, which I nibble every possible opportunity.
The whistle tells us that 60 seconds is up. And whoever is speaking at that moment gets an extra point. On this occasion, it was Derek Nimmo who has taken the lead at the end of that round alongside Clement Freud. Derek Nimmo, will you begin the second round? The subject is noise. Would you talk on that, starting now?
Listen to the noise that the loud waves make as they sound on the shore for the second day break. The noise of the trees and the Boy Scouts' knees as they fly through the air.
Clement Freud.
Deviation.
Why?
Boy Scouts' knees make no noise.
They do if they're knobbly knees, don't you think?
And you should see the way they shake when some of those brownies go by.
No, they are totally silent.
I think it's probably a legitimate challenge, Clement, so we give you a point, and the subject, 45 seconds left, noise, starting now.
Noise.
And Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Hesitation.
No, don't be so mean. Don't be so mean, that's too tough.
Well, I thought it was very mean. You say the knees don't make a noise. I mean, if you put 2 knees up close to a microphone and bang them, there's a noise. I think they can hear that kind of noise.
In case, listeners, you hadn't already guessed it, Derek Nimmo was illustrating that his knees could make a noise. He pulled his trousers up, he stood up and knocked his knees. And I must tell you that exactly half a second went by. It's on the watch here. So I will tell Clement Freud he has 44.5 seconds in which to continue talking on noise, starting now.
The noise made by a pair of knees banging together is very similar to that when you pull a carrot.
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Deviation. It's already been established that knees don't make any noise.
But you've already counter-established that they can make a noise if you bang them together.
Well, then I must get my point back again. Then,
no,
you can't get it both ways. Either knees make a noise or knees don't make a noise.
They don't make a noise when they're stationary, and that was the point you established with the wafting of the...
No, I didn't. It's the noise of Boy Scouts' knees.
It's absolutely right. It's borne out in the poem. Bees in the trees seem to sneeze as they wheeze, sneeze and the knees with the flu.
Absolutely.
Don't tease the bees, please.
Look, we're playing just a minute, and we're going to try...
Very good.
Yes, well, let's get back to the game. Amy MacDonald, you haven't spoken for a long time. What do you want to say?
I have a true point to make, and that is actually repetition.
Of what? They've been repeating themselves. They never stop repeating themselves.
They've never stopped talking about knees since they sat down.
I know.
Knees are
It's
fascinating
all
things, aren't they?
I think that challenge was incorrect, if anybody can remember what it was. And Clement Freud has another point, and there are 40 seconds left on noise, starting now.
The scream of a turnip keeps people up many a night.
Deviation. Turnips do not scream.
All right, if knees don't make a noise, turnips can't scream. And so, Kenneth, you have a point, and you have 36 seconds on noise, starting now.
This is one of the banes of all modern life. Every aspect of it is
Amy MacDonald is challenged.
Hesitation.
No, Amy.
Well, he does it on purpose. All modern life.
Yes, I know he does it on purpose. He does it very well on purpose. He keeps going. Sorry, Amy, we can't allow that one. Kenneth, you have 31 seconds on noise, starting now.
For civilized man, the only remedy is to take some cotton wool, impregnate it with suitable wax, stuff it in the eardrobe in order to pass
Clement Freud is challenged.
Deviation.
Now, why? Where's the deviation there, mate? Come on, stand up for your argument.
He's just about to tell us. Give him a chance.
Eardrobe.
The eardrobe.
Eardrobe is a perfectly reasonable word, isn't it? It's you know what I'm talking
Yes,
about.
I do.
We know what you're talking about.
Earlobe. Eardrum and lobe together make eardrobe.
But it was, of course, devious, but you weren't actually deviating from the subject of noise. You were using an incorrect word, but you were illustrating with a combination of two other words a point, and therefore we're going to give you the benefit of the doubt, Kenneth, and let you keep the subject until you've 20 seconds on noise, starting now.
And the only thing to do is to cosset yourself and put up your double glazing. Shut
the only thing you could do was to shove things up your ear a moment ago. So if that's the only thing, they can't both be the only thing you can do.
If you...
So deviation.
There are many things you can do, and if
So the only thing you can do... You must
only
listen,
thing
Nick,
you
you're
can
not
do
listening.
is this, and the only thing somebody else can do is something else.
Okay,
Kenneth keeps
repetition
the
of only.
subject, and
What?
there are 15
Repetition of
seconds
only,
on it on noise. Kenneth starting now.
Of course, the radio contributes to this.
Clement
loud...
Freud is challenged.
What is that?
Repetition of course.
Oh, well, I mean, that's parts of speech, isn't it?
I know, but you have said it more than once. Clement Freud, you have a point. 14 seconds on noise, starting now.
Oh, Mary, go and call the cattle home was a very loud noise heard over the sands of Dee, according to a poet whose name escapes me at this moment, but when I return I will look it up. There are other noises, especially those in cities.
Clement Freud was then speaking when the whistle went. He gained that extra point for doing so, and he has a lead of 1 over Kenneth Williams at the end of that round. Clement, will you begin the next round? The subject, rates. Will you talk on them? 60 seconds, starting now.
I think rates must be the most boring subject that Ian Messager has ever thought of. You pay rates every now and again, quarterly, half-yearly. They make little sense, because it not only gives rateable value on the invoice, but then states 0.2731 in the pound, whereafter you are given the option of settling the account in one... You see how boring it is.
We wondered how much more boring you could make it.
I thought you all fallen asleep.
We were convinced that you had. Derek, your challenge, please.
Well, hesitation.
Yes, I would agree.
And gross boredom.
We can't give you a point for boredom. We give you a point for hesitation, and the subject, 32 seconds left, rates starting now.
Well, one of the things that really interests me when I pay my rates, I suppose, above all, I think, yes, is the collection of...
Kenneth Williams.
Think twice.
No,
think twice.
And think.
Think. Well, there you are. Same thing. Isn't think twice.
It's almost the same, Kenneth, and it's very, very difficult. It's not the same word, but please keep your diction clear so we know, and you don't get wrong challenges. Derek, you continue with 27 seconds on rates starting now.
The collection of rubbish is of tremendous interest to me. I tell you why. I pay, I don't know how much, a lot of money to the borough council, and they do not collect the junk that I...
Clement Freud. Challenge.
I thought it was a repetition of collect,
No,
but
collect
in
and
fact...
collect.
No, and you thought he was going to say rubbish again. No, but he gets a point because you anticipated,
You shouldn't think what I think.
It looked from your face as if that's what it was. 15 and a half seconds on rates, Derek, starting now.
Actually, if one was paid for the rate for a particular job, such as being chairman of Just a Minute, Nicholas Parson would begin very little money at all, because he is extraordinarily woolly-headed, cloth-eared, and curiously unattractive.
Amy MacDonald has challenged.
Deviation.
Absolutely!
Why?
It doesn't matter why, to what you've just said. Amy, you've done it beautifully. There's 1 second to go on rates with you starting now.
I don't know absolutely anything about race.
Amy MacDonald, your turn to begin. And the subject is what I do when I wake up in the night. Would you talk on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, oh no,
challenge.
can I have another chance?
Yes, let's have another chance.
What is your challenge
Well,
first?
she hasn't started, but there's hesitation. But let's have another chance.
I'm sure that when Amy wakes up in the night, the first thing she does is she pauses. So that was an incorrect challenge. You have 59 seconds, Amy, on what I do when I wake up in the night after your pause, starting now.
What I do when I wake up in the middle of the night very much depends on what I did before I went to sleep. That is, if I'm very worried about something and I wake up in the middle of the night, then I lie there and I gaze up at the ceiling and I start to sort my problems out to myself. If, however, I still can't get to sleep, I get out of bed, go into the kitchen, and perhaps I will make myself a small cup of tea. Whereupon... Kenneth Willis is making me laugh.
What's he doing in your kitchen with a small cup of tea?
Go on.
No one's challenged you yet. You've got to keep going. No one's challenged you yet.
I can't look at him.
Well, keep going. He's got a small cup of tea in the kitchen.
Yes.
Come on. Yes, right. Go on.
Go on.
However, perhaps before I went to sleep, I might have eaten something that is very
Amy MacDonald returned in fine fettle to just a minute. She managed to keep going, repeating herself, pausing, deviating, and drying up, and having Kenneth Williams with a small cup of tea in her kitchen in the middle of the night. Kenneth, we're back with you. The subject is William the Conqueror. Would you talk on that for 60 seconds, starting now?
Well, you know, it's a proud remark of this island that we've never been kneeling, so to speak, under the proud foot of a conqueror, but we have indeed
Amy MacDonald has challenged.
hesitation. A conqueror.
Yes, I do think on this occasion he was drawing out his eyes and a bit too long.
No, but he also took a huge breath in between A and conqueror.
Well, I don't mind about the size of his breath. The poor chap's got to breathe. But I think it was tantamount to hesitation, which we'll give you, Amy. And you have 47 seconds on William the Conqueror, starting now.
William the Conqueror discovered a fantastic piece of information. He...
Kenneth Williams is challenged.
Well, deviation, he didn't at all.
How do you know he didn't?
No,
How do you know he did? It may not be recorded in the history
beg your
books. He
pardon.
might have discovered some fantastic piece of information.
He discovered nothing of the kind.
It was in...
Well, he hasn't established what she discovered yet.
No, you don't even know.
She's got it all mixed up. She doesn't know anything about William. It's perfectly obvious to anyone. She's as mad as a hatter. And she sits there accusing other people, acting or doing their job properly, accusing them of making her laugh. You heard what she said about me earlier
Well, I
on?
must say, if I woke up...
If I'm sitting here doing my job thoroughly professional, and there she
Kenneth,
can't...
if I woke up in the middle of the night and found you with a small cup of tea in my kitchen,
You shouldn't have women on this show, you know.
Amy, you have 44 seconds on William the Conqueror.
I think you're being very verbatrating, Kenneth.
That was a piece of information that William the Conqueror discovered. There are 44 seconds with you, Amy, starting now.
This tiny piece of information was...
Clement
I
Freud's
repeated
challenge.
it.
Yes.
No, that doesn't count, though.
Yes,
does
I'm
it?
afraid it does on this occasion, Amy. I can't be too lenient. Clement, your challenge...
Repetition.
Yes. There are 42 seconds on William the Conqueror, starting now.
While William the Conqueror took only a matter of months to conquer England, Hereward the Wake held out against him until the year 1073.
Kenneth Williams has challenged.
Well, deviation. Clement knows perfectly well that William the Conqueror was not fighting Hereward, and he just did that so I could get in.
You very nice of him.
It was very sweet of him.
I think it's very sweet of you to have said that to show that Clement wasn't displaying a lack of historical knowledge. 32 seconds left, starting now.
He had this idea of compiling a register of the population, which comes down to history as the Doomsday Book. It's supposed to be, really, the first example of parochial records ever kept in any...
Derek Nimmo has challenged.
Record. Repetition.
I think he said record before, and he said records a second time. He said it was the think and the thinks.
Yes.
That I gave to you last time, and so I let Kenneth continue with 10 seconds on William the Conqueror, starting now.
And he organised all these monks very well, you see, to do their learning behind...
Derek Nimmo's
Repetition of you see.
All right, if you're going to have little things like that, we have to
Yes, you
allow
are getting rather nasty, I've noticed. Yes, I think there's a vituperative note creeping in.
Ah, that's the word.
Oh, that's what you discovered, is it? That was your William the Conqueror discovery, is it?
No.
7 seconds on William the Conqueror with you, Derek Nimmo, starting now.
He was the son of Duke Robert of Normandy, who had a liaison with the
Kenneth Williams,
daughter.
I would agree, Kenneth. You have 3 seconds on William the Conqueror, starting now.
The claim of the Angevin kings all stems from this gentleman.
Well, we did manage, with a little help, to hear from Kenneth a great deal on William the Conqueror, so he gained a number of points in that round, including one for speaking when the whistle went, so he's got a commanding lead at the end of that round.
Oh, how lovely! Oh, you were there, you were all there. Oh, thank you. Thank God for it.
Derek Nimmo, will you begin the next round? The subject is my grandfather's whiskers. Would you talk for 60 seconds on that subject, starting now?
My grandfather had the most extraordinarily long whiskers, and they were frightfully useful for him when he went to fight in the Boer War. During the siege of Mafeking...
Amy MacDonald is challenged.
Deviation. His grandfather couldn't possibly have fought in the Boer War.
Well, he did.
Well, he did. He could have done. I don't know whether it makes Derek very old or very young. It depends which way you look at it. Derek, I disagree with the challenge. You have a point, and you have 49 seconds on my grandfather's whiskers, starting now.
Well, I'm sure that Nicholas Parsons' grandfather could have fought in the Boer War because his mother's 80.
Clement Freud is challenged.
Repetition of Boer War.
Yes, on war, anyway. I didn't hear the boy, rather swallowed. There are 45 seconds for you, Clement, on my grandfather's whiskers, starting now.
I had 2 grandfathers, and only my maternal one had whiskers with which he stirred his tea, which at that time was a very common thing to do because coffee was not normally introduced in everyday...
Amy MacDonald is challenged.
Davy, it's impossible to stir tea with whiskers. Come on.
Well, you see, this is one of these impossible decisions. It's probably not impossible, but highly unlikely. I tell you what I will do, Amy, to be fair to you, I will put it to the audience, and if they think...
Don't ask them, they don't know nothing. They know about whiskers.
I don't mind whether they don't know anything or not.
Oh, yes,
they probably know far probably know far more than you, Kenneth. If you agree with Amy's challenge, will you cheer? And if you disagree, will you boo? And will you all do it together now? You think that Clement Freud's maternal grandmother did not stir tea with her whiskers.
No,
Amy MacDonald, you have a point, and you have 33 seconds on my grandfather's whiskers, starting now.
Now, my grandfather could possibly stir anything with his whiskers because they were very long, and if he plaited them, it made them very stiff, you see. So he could put it into anything and swirl it around. And I know this because I used to sit on his knee and plait them for him.
Repetition of plaiting.
Yes, you plaited them far too often, Amy. I'm sorry. Derek has a point and 15 seconds on my grandfather's whiskers, starting
So
now.
he piled up the sandbags, grabbed his rifle, and getting hold of the whiskers, he draped them over his head. And this is the first example, that's totally true, of camouflage to be used in the British Army. And from Lord John Roberts, Dave and Powell, they all pointed to my grandfather's whiskers and said...
Derek Nimmo was then speaking when the whistle went, so he gained an extra point. The situation at the end of that round is very close. Amy MacDonald is just in 4th place, only 1 point behind Clement Freud, who is equal with Derek Nimmo, but they're both 2 points behind our leader, who is still Kenneth Williams. Clement, will you begin the next round? The subject is banks. Will you talk on them? 60 seconds, starting now.
Of all the splendid goalkeepers who've ever played football for England, Gordon Banks has to rate almost at the very top. He was a man of amazing agility, great foresight, and was athletic beyond all other players in the squad at the time. I remember very well seeing...
Kenneth Williams is
I
chap.
think this is hyperbole, don't you?
No, I don't. I absolutely agree. Gordon Banks is one of the finest goalkeepers ever.
You wouldn't choose your licks. Oh, it's just lick spittling, isn't it? I mean, it's awful business.
Oh, shut up. I've had enough rudeness. I'm going to take points away in a minute if you're not careful.
Promises. Was drunk.
Clement Freud has a point for an incorrect challenge, and he has the subject of Banks with 44 seconds left, starting now.
During the 1968 World Cup in Leon, Gordon Banks was...
Amy MacDonald's challenge.
Hesitation.
Quite right,
Is it
and
when-
boring.
Amy MacDonald has got the subject for her first challenge, and she keeps it
That's why I hesitate.
with an extra point. And there are 40 seconds left, Amy, on Banks, starting now.
Ye banks and braes, oh bonny Doon, how can ye bloom sae fresh and fair? How can ye chaunt, ye little birds, and I say weary full care? Ye'll break my heart, ye won't.
And now we leave the White Heather Club and take you back to the studio where you'll be hearing the news.
I'm sorry to interrupt the concert. I've never heard you keep going so well, Amy, in your life. But about 16 bars back, you were challenged by Derek
I
Nimmo.
didn't hesitate or repeat myself.
But what is Derek challenge? Well, here.
Repetition, actually.
Yes, an awful lot of repetition.
Well, if you go through the song again, you'll find it
Oh, but
repeated.
that's like saying the.
No, the first time he challenged was on Cam. And it was quite right, so I'll have to give it to him. But we
Several
loved
notes
it.
were repeated, too.
Go give her a bonus point for a beautiful song. But Derek Nimmo has a point for a correct challenge, and there are 18 seconds left on Banks, starting now.
I bank with a very old family of whores. They started in 1672 in Fleet Street under the sign of the leather bag. I might point out it's spelled with an H and not a W. And they have gone on to this day. Very nice, actually, on the 300th anniversary.
Clement Freud is challenged.
Deviation.
Why?
It was only one bank at that time, and the subject is banks.
Well, he was talking about this one particular bank among
No,
many.
he's talking about Hawes Bank in the 17th century, which is not banks, it's bank.
Well, I said I bank
The
with
subject is banks, so you can talk about one individual bank if you
so
like.
nasty. You can reply politely. You're being ever so rude. Being very rude to Clement, who's come a long way tonight. I'm here to tell you he's come a long way, that boy. Look at him.
And he's probably going to go further yet. It's a very interesting situation. If Clement hadn't challenged then, we would have had 3 equal winners, because this is the last round. But because I disagree with his challenge, Derek Nimmo gets a point for an incorrect challenge, and there are 2 seconds left, starting now.
The Strawberry Bank Farm, which stood near...
I wish Clement hadn't challenged, because otherwise the final score would have been Amy MacDonald, who doesn't play as often, coming back only 1 point behind 3 equal winners, which we've never had. As it was with that last challenge, we had Amy in 4th place, 1 point behind Clement Freud and Kenneth Williams, equal in 2nd place, but 1 point behind this week's winner, Derek Nimmo.
Good old Derek, you won at last.
We hope you've enjoyed this edition of Just a Minute. From all of us here, goodbye.
The chairman of Just a Minute was Nicholas Parsons. The programme was devised by Ian Messiter and produced by Bob Oliver Rogers.